redeemer. And he has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He is the redeemer. And
Mr. Speaker, to mitigate the impact of the pandemic on businesses and households, ensure that economic activities recover and minimize job losses, government mobilized 18.19 billion out of the program 19.3 billion in 2020 from various funding sources as shown in Table 1 to support the budget. GOG contingency fund of 1.2 billion, World Bank group funds of 1.3 billion, IMF 1 billion program, AFDB 45 million, EU 504 million, BOG bonds 10 billion, summing up to 19.3 billion. Mr. Speaker, government program funding of 1,203,715,085 cedis to finance the coronavirus alleviation program. This program focused on achieving 5 key objectives: limit and stop the importation of the virus, contain its spread, provide adequate care for the sick, limit the impact of the virus on social and economic life, and inspire the expansion of our domestic capability and deepen our self-reliance. The Ministry of Health also led the preparation and implementation of the Emergency Preparedness and Response Plan, which was financed with funds from the World Bank. An amount of $230 million was secured from various facilities under the World Bank to support the implementation of COVID-19 Emergency Preparedness and Response Plan. The funding facilities included the Fast Track COVID-19 Facility, $35 million. This financing is Ghana's share of the World Bank's $4 billion Fast Track COVID-19 Facility that was announced in March 2020 to enable countries to deal with the pandemic. GARID SEC 65 million. This amount was drawn from the existing World Bank-funded Greater Accra Resilient and Integrated Development Project by activating the contingency response component of the project. An additional financing of 130 million in November 2020 to strengthen and scale up the gains of the EPRP. Mr. Speaker, an additional financing of $200 million was also secured in 2021, largely for the acquisition and deployment of COVID-19 vaccines to support other sources of financing of the vaccination program under this plan. The plan sought to achieve the following: strengthen coordination of the overall preparedness activities, strengthen capacity of regions, priority health facilities and points of entry to prevent, rapidly detect, investigate and control any COVID-19 outbreak in Ghana.
The Medina Market is one of the busiest commercial hubs in the capital. Its location, which is close to the Adentan Highway, makes it a conducive location for traders from several communities, including Adentan. However, traders at the market are not happy. They complain that prices of goods have shot up due to increment in wholesale prices, forcing them to add on the prices increment to customers. According to the traders, prices shot up marginally from the beginning of the year. Some traders at the market said they have no option than to increase their prices to make ends meet.
Mikafano seshi na medeba na mom ne bono na de mai na cars kano so kwasrupa mai last year de na ye na afidie de nkakra mai fe ne ekuyan kase na ntia de ba nti omo say ade ne bono de mom nti ka fe ne de ekuyan pan
la first na ke tono 2025 say about 35 40 nti nkofo so mo fi baby beto no so mo ba mo so no boy den so to ase sika ndi ho iti asa bi school yesu se kron kola mo school oh ama challenges aye bibiri ama yesu we ade to na enko kora wo enti bi afese yete wasa hwe gudu fe over ma hye fe bibiri wo ma chi vita na pa
For tomatoes traders, they have no option than to reduce their prices to meet customers' demand to avoid damage to their items.
Nti baby aye kofa no Burkina no ani boy din wo ho ntani ne hu expenses no edoso ne lorry fare kura no na ekoye mi ye di ba ha ye ntumi ntowo time price na say ye gi no ye ntumi ngi se wo di ba ha e be say nti ye tisu wa ha nti ye na ye boka e wo Ghana oh last year na nya kura e bi ya 20 million 80 million ye tokura po a unya usika say the nyamiadum obone bafom o ngofo didwa edwado mudi nanso wo pade a ne bo no e wo fom on hwe na omo kokwa no so bu no ebo no mra fom no se na be ye omo so ba ne ye ka bo no meto amaye o se omo na 10 million ni 9 million se sanka ba 5 million a wo ba konko no e betinya hwe ni be ye 20 cities half 10 cities ni pa no so dia ankoka beto na so bo 35 ne boy ne den enti anka bo ne kofo kakra ma omo so ba omo so betinya to ne tenta mamaye.
Some traders have maintained fixed prices to make ends meet.
To beans in last year, my bad this year, very expensive.
He didn't tell us in his presentation of yesterday that the excess 7.3 billion that he's talking about, where is the money? You should be mindful of the fact that this is a very critical matter that will come up. You can't come and tell us legislators that we had 19.3 billion. I have spent 12 billion. And then you don't expect us to ask you, then the balance of the 7.3 billion, where is it? Where is it? He was not able to account for it. My brother, and this raises serious matters because, you see, if you look at issues already in the public domain, there is a leading member of the New Patriotic Party in the Northern region. Indeed, the second vice chairperson of the MPP in the Northern region. Indeed, she was the lady who even contested me in the 2020 elections, who said that COVID funds were made available to the party for the purposes of the 2020 campaign, and that she as a second vice chairperson in the region and also a parliamentary candidate of the MPP got 100,000 Ghana cedis from the first round of the distribution. We don't know the second and third rounds and other what she got, but she told us that she got 100,000 Ghana cedis. First, as first vice chairperson, they gave her 50,000, and as parliamentary candidate of the MPP, she got another 50,000, and went on to give details as to how other COVID monies were disbursed. She said that every constituency in the country, the MPP gave 200,000 Ghana cedis. So, Massa, multiply 200,000 Ghana cedis by 275 constituencies. And that
Hello, Ghana! The time has come to arise. Come, let's protest against the imposition of the obnoxious e-levy on the already burdened Ghanaian people by the insensitive Akufo-Addo Bawumia government. Come and let's demand a full-scale and bipartisan parliamentary probe into the COVID-19 expenditures. Come, let's protest against the grabbing of state land by officials of the Akufo-Addo Bawumia government, particularly the declassification of huge portions of the Achimota Forest Reserve. Come, let's protest against the increased rate of police brutality and state-sponsored killings of innocent Ghanaians, as well as the growing culture of human rights abuses under the watch of President Akufo-Addo. Arise as we call on the need to drop that in jeopardy. Arise and join us on the Kromayeshi demonstration. The Kromayeshi demonstration is a historic one, never seen before in the Republic of Ghana. A 2-day demonstration organized by Arise Ghana, which is an amalgamation of political activists, patriotic citizens from across all political parties in Ghana, the media, civil society, and all walks of life. The 2-day demonstration starts on the 28th of June to 29th of June 2022. The first day, 28 June 2022, will begin the walk from the Kwame Nkrumah Circle interchange of Brasport, where we shall converge at 12 p.m. We shall move through the Nima Police Station Street to the Akwaje interchange and end at the frontage of the Jubilee House, where we will picket until 10 p.m. On day 2, 29th June 2022, we shall converge at the Elwak Sports Stadium at 12 p.m. and move on to the Lands Commission Road, to the Liberation Road, and all the way to the Ministry of Finance, where a petition will be presented to the Minister of Finance. From the Ministry of Finance, we shall move to the frontage of the Parliament House of Ghana, where we shall present a petition to the Speaker. Come and be part of this historic demonstration as we arise at the Kromayeshi demonstration. Our beloved country is in deep crisis and urgently require a rescue. Arise and join the Kromayeshi demonstration. This is a historic demonstration. Let us arise and save Ghana now.
He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He's the Redeemer and he has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He's the Redeemer and he has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom.
Thank you very much for choosing us. You are live on Pan-African Television. You are live on the platform, social media platforms of Pan-African Television, Facebook, YouTube. You can watch us live. It's the mother of all talk shows, Alhaji and Alhaji. And it's live on Radio Gold. Thank you for choosing us. I hope you had a lovely week. Well, this week, it was advertised to have happened last week. Happened on Wednesday. The finance minister went before Parliament to do a simple task: account for the money spent on COVID. Well, when he was done, the minority in Parliament disagreed with some of the figures he put across. They said there are inconsistencies between what you put across, what you're putting across at that moment, and what you told us. Even in your budget, we can identify the inconsistencies. The majority was of the opinion that it was finished business. He had been asked to come and account, and he had done that. So what was the big deal? The Speaker of Parliament, after listening, was of the opinion that Parliament was a house of records, that the records had to be consulted. And so he put together two committees, the Health Committee and the Finance Committee, and told them to do a simple task: go and look at the figures and come back and tell us whether or not the monies were spent where they said they were spent. The Speaker was not done. The Speaker was also not happy that the Finance Minister failed to mention what happened to the fund that was set up by government, put in the hands of trustees that were supposed to act on behalf of the states, and was asking questions about how those monies were spent. So the committee would also go back and look at that fund that is headed by former Chief Justice Sophia Akofo. They will do that work and are supposed to report back when Parliament resumes after recess. So we'll talk about that event, and then we'll talk about the Minister for Agric. He says the Planting for Food and Jobs program has been 100% effective. His evidence is simple. He went to Techima Market. He counted bags of maize. Evidence that there was food. So if there's any other reason why food prices were going up, it is not because he's not doing his job. It's because perhaps there are other sectors that are failing. People ask questions about food security. Is it about planting food alone? Or is it also about accessibility? But we'll talk about the Agri Minister's claim and the fact that he's also saying that a law needs to be passed to compel banks to borrow to farmers. Well, we'll spend some time on that issue. And then we'll end with a demonstration. Some groups and individuals have come together and said, well, you've been complaining about hardship for a while. Why won't we hit the streets and demonstrate over it? Show to government that things are not the best. And perhaps force government to do something about it. It's the Rise Ghana demo that will be our third discussion on the program Alhaji and Alhaji, the mother of all talk shows. My name is Sena Nombo. My panel today is made up of Mr. Kwesi Price, who is General Secretary of the Socialist Movement of Ghana, a veteran journalist. We are joined once again by Mr. Solomon Owusu, who is a member of the NPP's communication team. And then we're joined by a member of parliament who sat through that whole event, the finance minister presenting, attempting to account for the money spent on COVID. And he is a finance person. Before he went into parliament, his entire life was spent in the field of finance, not in Ghana, but outside this country, in some of the biggest banks. Is he happy? Well, Honorable Kweku Hagan is member of parliament for Cape Coast South, has joined us. And it's always a pleasure to see Beatrice in the morning. Lawyer Beatrice Anna. She's a private legal practitioner joining us this morning. So that's our panel for today. And over this, so we're a bit behind them. So let's dive right into it and start with the discussion on what the finance minister presented to Parliament. I'll start from my left, from the honourable member of Parliament for Cape Coast South. But before I do that, let me say a big thank you to the numerous radio stations currently tuning to us. We're grateful to all of you and to the other, I understand, forgotten the name they usually use for them. If there's any platform that's currently tuned to us, we are grateful to you. And thank you for giving us the reach that we get every morning. Well, let's start the discussion. And like I said, I'll start from my left. Honorable.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Sana.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm fine. I hope you are too.
Yeah, not bad at all. And first of all, good morning to my fellow panelists. It's the first time I've met you, lawyer. As well, my brother, we have met before. And then good morning to your viewers. You are right that the finance minister finally came to Parliament to report on the COVID expenditure, which is something we've been asking for quite some time. This is what he brought. I think it's about 15 pages or so. Yeah, 15 pages. And basically, he just outlined what he believed they have spent on COVID or received on COVID and obviously spent on COVID. Now, this paper is littered with so many numbers, and the numbers have been presented in a very inconsistent manner that you really need to drill down to be able to get exactly, where he's coming from. And the numbers don't add up. When you look at the numbers in this particular document itself, it doesn't add up. But when you reference it to the budget itself, and we are talking about two budgets here, the 2021 budget and the 2020 budget. In the way our budget runs is that we read the budget November of, the year we read the budget in is basically for the following year. So 2022 budget was read in November of last year. And the same as, 2021 read in 2020. Now, this pandemic hit us around March of 2020. And there was a media review by the finance minister in the middle of that year, as the pandemic started. When he came in, he basically told us that because of the COVID, we've got both economic and health crisis. On the economic crisis front, he told us that we were going to have a shortfall in terms of our revenue mobilization. So the anticipated revenue was going to fall by about 13.4 billion. And the revision on the expenditure side, as a result of the COVID, we're also going to spend about 11.8 billion, which basically means that you then have a gap of about 25 billion, which will feed into your deficit. Because if you are not going to get 13 billion of your revenue, and you are going to increase your expenditure by also almost 12 billion, then you have an additional gap to whatever gap was there previously. And therefore, the deficit was revised to be around 11.4%. Then he told us that as a result of that, we are going to need 19 billion, around about 19.1 billion, to be able to plug in the hole. Now, in the statement, and this is the same in the budget, he told us that with the 19 billion, and I said the numbers are all over the place, but I've taken time to break the numbers down. He said 19.3 billion is what has been programmed, which means that that's what they intend to raise. Then he said in here that they managed to raise 18 billion of that 19 billion. Now, the problem here is this. In the budget of 2021, that's the 2021 budget red, which means that we were capturing 2020 performance, and then we will have 2021 projections. In the performance of 2020, which was the COVID year, the same number of 19.3 billion, which he had reported in the document he provided Parliament last couple of days, he said, we projected 19.3 billion. We have spent 18.1. Now, this is on the 2021 budget. I didn't take the whole budget, so I decided to print the relevant portions, relevant side of the budget. So basically, utilization in 2020, let's get this clear. Utilization was 18.1 billion as against the 19 billion that they thought they were going to be able to raise. So that is it. That's 20. Then in the 2021 budget, he told us that, and this is a projection, and if you look at page 62 of 2021 budget, and I read, Mr. Speaker, a provision of 4.5 billion has been made for COVID-19 related expenditure. 200 million of that money will go into water and electricity under the COVID alleviation program. So this was the projection to be spent in 2021. Now, in his report, he did mention that, and 7, he said, Mr. Speaker, in 2021, the budget programmed a total of 4.6 billion. I mean 4.5, 4.6. Okay, as expenses. Now, so if you take it that we have spent 18 billion in 2020, then in 2021, we are going to spend 4.6 billion. Now, in his report, when you go to his table, some of the headings are not clear, but the figures are there, and you can relate them to what is in the budget. Yeah. So this was basically lifted. Page 14 was lifted from the budget straight. The 2021 budget. You can even see that the format is pretty much the same. And then in there, the 4.6 billion that they were going to raise, they were able to raise 4.5 billion. The 4.5 billion they spent, as it's got here, 3.9 billion. In the 2022 budget, where this was lifted from, the releases was 2.6, which is understandable. Because as I said, when you read the budget for the following year, you read it the last month or November of the previous year, the data you would have captured is only for 3 quarters. So the performance that you will give for that year, so if we were reading, like last year, the budget we read last year for 2022, the performance for 2021 would only be up to September, because you don't have the data. By November, you don't have October and proper data, okay? So your releases would be less than what he would have reported today, because today he has a full picture. So he said his releases then in the budget, all the other numbers, projections are the same. The only thing that will change is the releases, because that's the only thing he didn't know at the time of doing it. So the releases then were 2.6, and presently, knowing everything, the releases now is 3.9. Now, what that simply means is that if you add that together, if you add the 2021, which is about 3 billion or whatever, together to 2022, then you are basically talking about over 23 billion, basically. Because if you add the two numbers together, the 18 that was spent, that's the 18.19, and then you add the 3 point, whatever to it, 3 point, what's the figure? Get you the right figure. Okay, 3.9. Let's just do 3.9. Okay, so if you just do the 3.9, you basically get 22 billion, about 22 billion. So if you want to look at the money actually spent, it's 22 billion from 2021 to 2020 to 2021 is 22 billion and not 18 billion, no 19. The 19 you couldn't raise, that was for 2029. It was projected 2020. They projected 19, they realized 18, and they spent it according to the budget. Then in 2021, they projected 4.6. They realized 4.5, and they have so far spent 3.9. That's 22 billion in terms of utilization, not 18 million. So that itself is a non-starter. Then we go on further. And when you go on further, you realize funny things that they've done. Now, again, we've talked about 2020 being 19.3 programmed. When we say program, means budgeted for. Utilization was 18.19. Now, they did an interesting thing here. They said the shortfall in revenue, which itself is a COVID-related, because the reason why they had a shortfall was because of COVID. As I reported the deficit figures to you, as a result of that, there was a drop in revenue and an increase in expenditure. So on that, they made a projection, and this is where their numbers get mixed up. They made a projection of 11.16 billion. This is a projection on what they call COVID-related. So there are two things we need to look at here, which they need to really explain. The shortfall, everything else, because this is basically a COVID reporting. You had a shortfall in your revenue. Why? Because of COVID. So if you plug that shortfall, it's a COVID related. Okay? Now they decided to segregate it like direct and indirect spending on COVID. So direct spending on COVID is what they call COVID related. And indirect spending on COVID is what they use as a shortfall for revenue. Now, so when you come to utilization, and when you come to utilization of COVID-related, it's 8.12 billion utilization out of the 11 that they projected. The shortfall in revenue, they said they were going to use 8.14. That is, if they had realized the 19 billion. They were silent on it. So in this report, it doesn't tell us whether the revenue shortfall was actually utilized or not. And the projection was 8 billion. So if you are given a comprehensive report on COVID expenditure or COVID utilization, whether you have segregated direct COVID expenditure and you call it COVID related, and you call the revenue shortfall, which I'm saying is an indirect COVID expenditure, you call it just for revenue shortfall. Then, as you have reported that your COVID projected expenditure, COVID related, was 11 billion, but you actually spent 8.1 billion, you should also tell us that the portion that you use for the revenue shortfall, which you had projected to be 8 billion, but you never told us whether that 8 billion was spent or not spent. But what I picked is that if you tell me that you got 18.9 billion, that's the cash that came into your hands, but in your report, you said you have only utilized 8.1 billion, then the balance is 10.07 billion. Where is that money? Because you have not told me that you used that money as your shortfall. You said you were going to use 8.1. So even if you have used this 10 billion for your shortfall, it means that you have exceeded what you projected. So what caused the difference of almost about 2 billion that presumably you said you have spent on your shortfall of revenue? Then you come to 2021. And again, as I told you, the projection, what they call program, was 4.6 billion. You realized 4.5 billion. In 2021, you never actually told us categorically what you were going to use the money for, as you did in 2020, when you told us 11.1 will go into COVID-related, 8.1 will go into shortfall. In 2021, they were silent on that. So presumably, they didn't have a shortfall in revenue and everything was going to COVID-related, so direct. So if you realize 4.5 billion, which they have said in their report, and as I said, they lifted this from the 2022 budget, which was reporting on 2021 performance and 2022 projections. So when you look at that, you realize that in this report, and that is on, the report is all over the place. But when you actually pay attention, you will pick all their mischief out. Now, they said in their own report, and this is page 6, so the 4.6 is being reported here as the 2021 projections, and they have utilized 3.9 billion, as I said. So when you take the 2.9 billion as COVID related, there is a balance of 590 million. That is the difference between 3.9 and 4.5 billion, which is not being reported. And as I said, they have not made any provision for a revenue shortfall in 2021. So where is this 590 million gone? Now, if you add the 590 in 2021, that is the missing amount, to the missing amount in 2020, which is the 10.07 billion, you actually have a shortfall of 10.5 billion, or 10.6, because it's 590. So 10.6 billion, even though I can see, and to be fair, they made a projection of a shortfall of 8.1 billion, though they have not reported here. And for whatever reason, Somebody needs to explain that. So if you are fair to them, you can say that the 10 billion that is missing in 2020, 8 went into that shortfall. And 2 is missing. So they either show us where the 10.5 billion is or the 2.5 billion, if you get what I mean. So this is where we are. Then comes President Nana Akufo-Addo in the State of the Nation. He comes with 17.7 billion. That's the money that's been. But when he was giving the speech, the only number we could rely on was the number of 18.1. That was the only number of an expenditure that we knew up until then. So, though what is being reported here as 12 billion is utilized, the reason why they are saying 12 billion is utilized here is that they made an assumption that they will use 1.84. So I know that we've been talking over each other on this on these numbers, but the reality is that it is not that they've just used 12 billion, but they said 18. It's because they have not accounted for what was used for the revenue shortfall. That is why we have that discrepancy. So the 12 million that in their report was utilized on COVID-related does not account for a shortfall. So they themselves have segregated what they call COVID expenditure, which for me, I would say direct COVID-related and indirect. The indirect is what goes into the budget. As a result of having COVID generally, we didn't receive all the revenue we wanted. Expenditure had to go up. So we use that to support. But that is actually a proper way of reporting this. So that's where the discrepancy of 18 and 12 comes from. Because the portion that relates to a revenue shortfall has not been reported in this their report. Though, and interestingly, it's in the budget, but if you read here, yes, they mentioned it on page 3. And I will read this bit. It says, furthermore, during the presentation of 2020 mid-year, which I said earlier, I indicated the supplementary request included a program funding of 19.3, so that's the 19.3, from various funding sources to support the budget, both direct and indirect. On the expenditure side, an amount of 11.16, so this was what was projected for what I call direct COVID-related, was programmed. And the difference of 8.14 was programmed to provide for shortfall in revenue. So this is where the whole discrepancy is. Now, another money that is missing. The various sources where they claim they've got the money from. And when you look at their table 1, GOG contingency fund of 1.2 billion. This is basically stabilization fund. The stabilization fund, they had to cap it so they could take 200 million off it. That $200 million translate to 1.2 billion. That's as a rate of about maybe 6 Ghana cedis to the dollar. Then they got from the World Bank. They have here 230. The monies they've got here, World Bank is 1.3 billion, but that's incorrect. Or you say, okay, 2020 they are correct, because the monies they got from the World Bank, you remember, we thought they got 100 million from the World Bank. And then the World Bank director came and told us that actually 430 was what they received, which is accurate. Because when you add all the monies on the various World Bank programs, it comes to 230, which translates to this. But they have now come clean in this report, yet they have not added this money to anything. On number 12, page 5, number 12, he says, Mr. Speaker, an additional financing of 200 million was also secured in 2021 Here, when you look at 11, all the numbers you have here, $35 million, 65, 230, adds to $230 million. So that's the World Bank money so far in 2020. Then he says 12, an additional 200. So then it accounts for the director of World Bank's. Yeah, so the 200 you add to the 200 is 400. And so this 200, which translates to about 1.3 billion, is very silent here. Though they have mentioned it here, it's not in any table and has not been added to any money here other than stating that we've got an additional 200 million. Then you come to IMF. Initial money from IMF was $1 billion US. Then there was an additional SDR of another $1 billion. The first $1 billion is reported here. It's been added to the table, and that is the table 1, where they have IMF 1 billion, which translates to 5.8 billion. But the second 1 billion, which at the rate of 5.8 or 6 when they got the money, would have translated to 6.5 billion, is not here, nowhere. When you add these two monies, it comes to 7.8 billion. That money is totally missing. You add it to the 22 billion that we've talked about, that when you actually add 2021 and 2022, it gives you 22 billion. You add this to it, you are around about 30 billion. That's where the 30 billion I was telling you about comes from. So there is a serious problem with this report we have here. But the good thing about this report, Sena, is this. All along, there had been speculation upon speculations about how much money has been spent here or there. Figures were flying from President, from Dr. Baumia, from the finance minister. Here, it's like, and then we have, newspaper gurus and all that here. This looks like headline. It's like you've been given a headline in a newspaper. It is for you now to read. So if we drill down, what we asked the finance minister to come and do, the finance minister, and haven't had the opportunity to work at the finance ministry, I can say that for him, you want to know what the COVID money was used for. Okay, I gave this one to Sena, I gave this to this, I gave this to that. That's my balance sheet. I got in this and I expended this. He doesn't tell you what the money was actually used for. So all the monies that the ministries, department, agencies, party, foot soldiers got does not appear here. So that is why it is important for for the Speaker or for Parliament to do a further investigation into this matter to actually ascertain exactly what these monies were used for. Not just who was giving the money. The spending officers, who were the ministries, department, metropolitan, municipal, district assemblies, who got these monies to fund their elections and all that. That's where we need to go. Now, the other thing that is strange is that this is supposed to be a comprehensive report of COVID spending that should account for all monies. The government set up a trust fund with trustees. The money that they collected there came from private institutions and even state institutions. Because it is a government trust, the question now becomes, when the money is collected, the trustee is a custodian of the money, but are they the ones to keep it? And our laws say no. Because any money that you spend, that is a government expenditure, must come from certain vaults that are approved by Parliament. What are these vaults? One is the consolidated fund. That's where government spends money from. The contingency fund. That's why when we went into the stabilization for 200 million, it was sent into the contingency, and that is what they have reported here as 1.something billion. Then we have the statutory fund, where other monies goes in and certain expenditures happens there. Now the question is, where did they spend the money that came from outside, private sector, what have you, the trustee money? Was it spent at the pleasure of the trustees, or was the money transferred to the consolidated or contingency, wherever they went, as long as it's an approved government area? And how much was it? And that is the Speaker's specific directive, that he, the Speaker, wants to know whether the money sat whichever account, I don't know whichever account the trustees were using to collect the money, and they spend the money from there, or did they transfer it under the authority of the finance minister for spending? So this is where the problem about this whole document and where the numbers that is flying around all comes. And I have done a proper table of this to show you where the numbers are coming from. And so when you look at it, as I said, it's not 12 billion against 18 where everybody is baffled. No, there was a component which is supposed to be a revenue shortfall that they themselves projected is 8 billion, but they were silent in reporting it. That is what has created that discrepancy. And they should come and tell us whether that 8 billion was spent or not. If they did, why was the money 10 billion? And they said they were going to use 8. So did they use 8? And where is the 2 billion? And then in 2021, the 590 that they are silent on, where is that money? So they have an explanation of, I should say, a 10.5 billion Ghana cedi question to answer. So that is on the numbers side. Before I'll give chance for my colleagues to, and then we can actually go in and look at where the monies went, the ones we know in this report. As I said, most of the monies that went elsewhere, we are yet to find out. But there are some that went into hot meals and packed meals and cold meals and all that. And then you have those that went into water and all that. And unbelievable, over 800 million that was used in establishing a bank. Was it a COVID bank? That's the question. An unnecessary bank, or the development bank they've set up, is unnecessary. Whatever the development bank is going to do, there are banks that are supposed to be. NIB was on its knees when the government bailed it out. NIB is equivalent to a development bank, the National Investment Bank. When we say NIB, we even lose the name and therefore lose the concept. You have the Agriculture Development Bank. It's now a listed bank, of course, but government has shares in it. The bank was set up specifically to address the agriculture value chain, agro-processing, agriculture itself and all that. So if you, in a crisis, in an emergency, that's when you decide to open a bank. When you have spent 20 billion in killing banks that could be in existence today, the banks just needed 400 million. Let's say they didn't have anything. When the Bank of Ghana increased the capital requirement to 400 million, and let's say the 9 banks, and they did have something, UT and all that have some money, but supposing they didn't have anything, the government could have lent them 400 million each, and the 9 banks, that will give you 3.6 billion. So tops, 4-5 billion, these 9 banks could have been saved, and they would have contributed to the liquidity challenges that we have in the country today. But you collapse them and use COVID money to set up a new bank, another chop area. And that's what you see, this whole report is littered. The 600 million that was supposed to go into Agenda 111. Agenda 111, the sword was cut in August of 2021. They released 600 million in 2020. Now, where is that 600 million and where is the interest on that 600 million? Because when they started, the way they have started, They have released an additional 700 million. Now they tell you that 600 million was used for preparatory work. A hell of a preparatory work for 600 million. Preparatory work to start a project, 600 million. You know, it's looking at the same cathedral story. Oh, no. That's where we are.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll go to solution. But before I do that, let me just acknowledge that we are live on Shine FM in Akachi 96.9, Chaos FM in Adaklo 91.7, Nuwasi Radio in Ketekrachi on 89.7, Sela Radio Dabala 97.1, Diamond FM in Tamale is on 93.7, Bewa Radio in Yendi 106.5, Radio Kitahon Saboba 95.7, Benya FM in Elmina 105.7, Cape FM in Cape Coast 93.3, Global FM in Ho 105.1, and their sister Volta 1 TV. We are also live on Zebs FM in Zebila 95.9, and then True FM in Adeso 92.5. So,
Sena, good morning to you, your viewers and co-panelists. Listening to Honorable, the sense I gather from his presentation is that we did not need the Minister of Finance in Parliament. Because Riley, as he rightly said, all the figures that the Minister of Finance came to read or came to give to the good people of this Ghana are captured in the 2020 and 2021 budget. So clearly, the NDC wanted to double in propaganda. And that is all to which what the Minister of Finance was asked to do. So that they can make headlines with their own figures and say, oh, some monies are missing. I mean, he was struggling to, as it were, defend the 10.5 billion that he says is missing. And you know why he's saying 10.5 billion is missing? Because his own former leader of the NDC, who is the originator of this whole propaganda that led to questions being filed in Parliament for the finance minister to come and answer, had shot himself in the foot by telling the whole world, when he had an opportunity of addressing this nation at Movenpick, socialists with taste, that Ghanaians during COVID, the government had 30 billion cedis. So you know the 19.3, he wanted to add the 10.5 billion, so it will approximate to 30 billion to justify what the former president said. Sena, why was the finance minister called to Parliament? He was called there to make a statement on COVID expenditure. Wasn't that why he was called? And other 16 questions. And the document that he read from dealt with the issues amply, without any ambiguity. In 2020, the Minister of Finance went to Parliament to tell Parliament that they needed 19.3 billion. That was the amount they programmed to get. In the same budget, the minister told the world that on the expenditure side, we were expected to spend 11.16 billion. That is there for COVID. And we are talking about COVID. So the minister had no business whatsoever veering off the road, but to restrict himself to COVID. You are told in the same budget that of the 11.16 billion we wanted to, we had projected to spend, we could only utilize 8.122 billion in 2020. We have given you the breakdown of where these monies went to. Again, in 2021, we told the whole world that we were going to expend 4.6 billion on COVID-related expenditure. Mind you, the minister was there to answer questions related to COVID. So everything must be COVID and not anything else. Fortunately, the country did not spend or utilize the entire 4.5 billion that was realized out of 4.6, but we expended 3.9 billion. So now my little mathematics tells me that 8.122 plus 3.9 gives to 12 billion. Finito. So where from this business of 30 billion. He himself, we have met on this platform, that he gave me a figure of 30 billion. And he gave me a breakdown. And today he's telling me some monies are missing. Missing where? Missing from where? You see, as we move forward as a nation, we have to take the people of this country very serious. That the days of propaganda must cease to give way for productive and constructive discourse. On the 12th of February 2020, you know, COVID started in 2019, and we were looking at the world stage, how it was going to pan out. And so the government needed to give itself some time to study how the whole thing would develop or unfold in the world stage. The NDC started mounting pressure in January. And on the 12th of February 2020, their ranking member on foreign affairs, together with the NDC, gave this government an ultimatum to go and bring Ghanaians that were stranded in China, Wuhan specifically. And that government must, if they will even break the vote of Bank of Ghana, they should go in and take money and go and bring Ghanaians who are in Wuhan, though we don't know the nature and the character of this virus. At that time, they were calling for government to expend more. Government said, no, let's take our time, because we were in a difficult situation. Our revenue position wasn't all that good to support such a lousy venture. We waited until the 10th or 11th of March, thereabout in 2020, when the World Health Organization declared this virus as a pandemic. Ghana had our first case on the 12th of March 2020, and government decided to act. Sena, everything that government did or has done over the period is captured in what the minister said. You enjoy free water. I enjoyed free water at the expense of the state. Lifeline electricity consumers enjoyed free electricity. Able consumers, you were given 50% rebate. You enjoyed it. You can't say no. We have small and medium scale enterprises that got assistance from government. Government provided PPEs. As a result of this government realized that the infrastructure structure we had in this country could not support the COVID situation. So government came out with Agenda 111. That again, monies went out. Look, schools that had to reopen. Government had to spend a lot of money for these school kids to go back to school, whilst our neighbors had their pupils in their homes or students in their homes. And all these things were captured in the budget of 2020 and 2021. Yet we had our brothers and sisters in the NDC saying the Minister of Finance, and for that matter, the government has spent 30 billion and needed to answer, when they knew very well that the amount that we had expended was nowhere near 13 billion. They called for it. And here I want to question, how come the former president got 20 billion as the amount that was given to this government by the Bank of Ghana? Because in his lecture to the nation in May, these were his breakdowns. And let's just oppose the figure that the Minister of Finance, and we expect the NDC, if they have contrary figures, to, as a matter of urgency, organize press conference, because that's what they are used to come up with figures that are contrary to what the Minister of Finance had. In May, the former president, during the Ghana Crossroads lecture, told the world that the IMF gave us 1 billion, which is correct. They gave us $200 million from the stabilization fund, correct. 430 million from World Bank, correct. 400 million to the Bank of Ghana, correct. And 20 billion from the Bank of Ghana. Whereas government is telling you that you only got 10 billion. So I'm asking this morning, where did the former president get the additional 10 billion? Who fed the former president with the wrong information? Or is it for propaganda sake that we got 20 billion? That bastardized this government, that this government was on carrying was just reckless in spending when the actual situation was not the case. Even where government had projected to spend 11 billion, government did everything possible to rather utilize 8 billion to save money to the state. Where it had projected to spend 4.6 billion, government being so cautious of our financial situation decided to spend 3.9 billion. This government, we are doing so well. Sena, the National Democratic Congress as a political party has some form of apology to render the good people of this country for where it has brought us to. Because at the end of the day, Honorable was saying that even in 2021, the 4.6 billion that we told the world that we were going to expect, we did not give a breakdown. If you look at your paragraph 18, everything that the 3.9 billion was spent on has been provided. Again, he told the world this morning that the $200 million that the World Bank gave in 2021, there was no explanation. Indeed, the very document that is holding explains what the money was used for. That money was used for the procurement and deployment of vaccines. So what is so ambiguous or what is so unclear about what he read? Let us develop this country with the truth that it deserves, and not what we think should be the situation. Now he's saying the finance minister should have given details of how the MMDCs use the monies for. Wasn't it the same case that we were calling for the Auditor General rather to audit the account, the COVID accounts, so that we can get all these details? So always it's a matter of shifting goalposts. When they are beating here, they quickly turn around and say, why didn't you do this? When you know that the very constitution that you're oppressed with has a body mandated or clothed with the powers to do proper auditing. Yet the whole world was made to believe that the finance minister has been running away from parliament. Because in the figment of their own imaginations, the finance minister has done chop. Well, this cannot. When in fact, everything is clear. I will urge the Auditor General's Department or the Audit Service to, as it were, fast track their auditing of the various MMDCs on this COVID hula baloo, so that at the end of the day, those nitty-gritty details that the NDC wants, whether it's for their propaganda, whether it's for whatever they will get it, so that we interrogate it. Since the finance minister went to parliament, they have run away from even debating their own questions. Now you don't hear them talk about it again. Now they are saying, oh, the last time I listened to one of the MPs saying, how were they able to count the number of people that were rushing for food? Hey! But those that were sharing the food, didn't they go there with the packs? And can't you count the packs? So if I went there with 2.7 million packs and all got finished, is it not 2.7 million people that will eat it? Must I count all those that came when I had 2.7 million packs? What kind of logic is that? One faith-based organization has been giving money to be supplying dry foods to Ghanaians, and Ghanaians are the better judges of how we perform during COVID. When people had monies to stabilize their businesses, then we had people saying that our government had misused state funds. On the question as to the trustees, the trust funds that were established, I agree with him. Government has to come clean, and indeed we will come clean. Government would give detailed expenditure expose to parliament, for parliament to peruse to their satisfaction. But I dare say, from how they have behaved, they are in the know as to how much has been realized how the money has been utilized, except that, you know, they have to always make the system hot to achieve their own parochial political interest. But the Ghanaian is wide awake that the mistake of yesterday, that we were swindled into believing that they could do anything serious, will never repeat itself. And that every matter will be interrogated. Just like now, as answers were provided, people are running away and shifting to cathedral. When cathedral answers are provided to, they run away and say, hey, even the cathedral, you said you were going to paint it blue. Why is it that you are written white here? That is what they are doing. Creating confusion everywhere. So, Sena, the finance minister's call to parliament was much ado about nothing. And that I called it academic exercise. That academic exercise has been done beautifully. They do not have any contrary figures. Before they can poo-poo the report or say anything otherwise, they have to bring their own report stating that, for instance, government says or claims it took 1.2 billion from the contingency fund. According to our information, you took 1.5 billion. Government says it got $430 million from the World Bank. According to our information, you had $800 million. Government claims the development partners gave us $100 million. No, you had 10 billion. Like I've questioned the former president, he rather must come and address the nation how he got the 20 billion rather than 10 billion that the government claims he got from the Bank of Ghana. I will end it here.
Thank you, Solomon. Also, before I come to Lawyer Annan, let me do a few messages. This is from Baba, and congratulations on the PhD, Baba. He says, on the issue of the finance minister's inability to fully account for all the over 19 billion COVID-19 funds, further highlights the need for a thorough investigation into the total funds mobilized and expended. This cannot be business as usual, where we spend few weeks talking about it and allow those who looted the COVID-19 funds to be chilling with the stolen money. The minority group and the speaker have so far shown that they are ready to hold the corrupt government accountable. They are encouraged to keep that fight up by holding the government accountable, because it is the only way Ghanaians can realize that the NDC is totally different from the MPP. Aluta continua, he says. A few messages from our Facebook page, and thank you for joining us on Facebook. Yozevi Farouk, who says, good morning. Seriously, there is inconsistencies between the president and finance minister on the expenditure of COVID-19 funds. The president said 17.7 actually, vice president 18 billion, and the finance minister says 12 billion. Who should we believe now? Sapi Agbo says a myriad of scandals and misappropriation of our scarce resources by this crass, incompetent finance minister and the Kufuor Bawumia government is mind-boggling. There's CJ, who says 600 million for preparatory work, yet they are telling us chiefs are not releasing land for Agenda 111. The MPP has come to the end of the road as far as their wits are concerned. See who is talking about propaganda now. The figure 8 is 2 zeros joined. They can only break the 8 by getting one of those zeros. There's also a few of you. Someone also seems to be attracting a lot of. It's difficult to pick. This is Haruna Jibril, who says, my humble plea to His Excellency the President of the Republic, he could kindly sack or reshuffle most of his appointees and bring in new faces if indeed you want to break the 8 they are making. Okay, there's a few other messages. Samuel Lama says all those accomplices, collaborators, and conspirators who ensured that this 419 MPP government was imposed on Ghanaians will definitely reap whatever they have sowed. Louis Zano says, when the government have captured all state institutions, if government abuse and misuse our taxes, avoiding paying them cannot be a crime. Thank you for those messages. Right.
Good morning to our viewers and listeners. And I must say that listening to Solo, it looks like we even have a bigger challenge than I thought. Because after the finance minister's statement, I have seen how government communicators have struggled to even defend or explain the inconsistency in the finance minister's statement. And my understanding prior to the finance minister coming to parliament was that he was coming to account for COVID-19 expenditure. This 15-page document I have here falls short of every standard. I'm sure even if you go to Burkina Faso or even a military-led country, when we are talking about standards of accountability, this document as presented would not meet any criteria. And I'm surprised that the finance minister that was touted to be a product of Yale will present this document to us and claim that this should meet the criteria for accounting for COVID-19 expenditure. Because you see, what this document contains are vague expressions, omnibus statements with misstatements, concealment, and inconsistency. That is only, I mean, those are the things that this statement contains. And Honorable has done a very good job by taking us through the finance or the financial aspects about the inconsistency and some of the misreporting and how some of the figures don't add up. Some have not been reported at all. And so I wouldn't want to go on that tangent. Safe to say that, you know, we say to whom much is given, much is expected. And I think that that adage is very deep, because prior to COVID-19, you would not ordinarily get facilities under very relaxed condition as this government had. Solo has copiously mentioned the 1 billion from the World Bank, the monies we receive from the IMF, in recent times the European Union. In fact, we were on the spree of receipts from various international organizations, even though we were supposedly supposed to be Ghana Beyond Aid. But graciously, we received all these. And so one would have expected that with the quantum of resources that this government had, some prudent economic decisions would have been made in the management of these funds. But like the broke man who wants to live like the Joneses, cladded in their lifestyle of opulence with no measure for future developmental plans, this government engaged in opulence, mismanagement, and indeed corruption, and they have been exposed by their own statement. And I'll demonstrate to you, so don't laugh. I'll demonstrate to you. It's a very serious matter. And for me as a young person growing up, it casts some doubt on what kind of hope, aspiration, and the future we are selling to the young people of this country. Because it is the expectation of every young person that they will live in an economic environment which is enabling enough to change their economic, social, political, and every situation that will make them better human beings. And sometimes I get saddened when someone says that I am better off as a cleaner in America than as a medical doctor in Ghana. I am better off as someone who works in the washing bay in America than someone who is a practicing lawyer in Ghana, except perhaps if you are an MPP with with these kinds of profession. And consistently, there is no conscious effort on the part of government with the resources at its disposal to even if they decide to chop some of the money, we want to plead with them to use part of it for development. Because this document I'm holding, with all its vagueness, is very surprising. So let me take you to paragraph 10 of the document. The government said it used an excess of 1.2 billion cedis for COVID alleviation program, itemized under 5 thematic areas. I want to talk about 4 for the sake of time, so I can address other matters. The first one has to do with limiting the importation of the virus. This government, in the most arrogant manner, never told us exactly what they did to stop the importation of the virus. Did it have to take you 1.2 billion to close the airports? Because even the measures that we know, which was supposed to be the government's way of preventing importation of virus, which is the testing at the airports, was given to the president's own very good friend, Frontiers Health. At the time Frontiers Health was given the contract to do the testing at the Kotoka International Airport, they were not licensed to do that. In the heat of COVID, Noguchi, at the sacrifice of citizens and everything, had to sacrifice. They even had to do sequencing of the virus and everything. But when it came to testing at the airport, of course, somebody had to be beneficiaries. Frontiers Health, at the last time I checked, when the minister reported, had made $16 million, with Ghana airports making just $1 million. So how does government tell us that out of the 1.2 billion cedis allocated to COVID alleviation program, they use some to prevent the importation of virus? There are no breakdowns. We don't know how much went into it and what specifically amounts to containing the virus. Now, the second thing the government said was that to contain the spread, so out of that 1.2 billion, I think the government should credit us with some form of intelligence a bit. Sometimes not all the people should be assumed to be, for want of a better expression, zombies. Because what did the government do about containment of virus? This is a government that never built a single hospital before, during, and after COVID. In fact, when COVID came, our savior as a country was the UGMC. But for the UGMC, their own health minister, who took a leave to UGMC just to go and rest in the midst of COVID patients, even though he did not have COVID. But for the UGMC, but for the rich hospital, which the President Mahama built, there was no COVID center. The next COVID center was the Gan East Hospital, which was again built by President Mahama. In fact, the only hospital that was built to contain the COVID-19 was the private sector initiative, which government did not have any role to play in. And so when you say that you use 1.2 billion to stop the spread of the virus, you did not give us how much of the 1.2 billion, where exactly, and who, and what. Because this figure is different from what was used to provide food. This figure is different from what was used to provide the hot meals. So nobody should come and tell me that the spreading of or preventing the spread of the virus was provision of free electricity and things. It is different from the figures. Now, the government also says that, I mean, one of the laughable ones, which I believe that only the MPP will be excited, was that they wanted to limit the impact of the social or the socio-economic impact of the virus on citizens. And I begin to say that sometimes when people are writing, I have a feeling that this speech was just written for the minister, and perhaps he didn't have the opportunity to go through, because under your government, you are experiencing the worst unemployment we've experienced in this country in 35 years. Yes, in 35 years, you have taken us back. That is the statistics from the Ghana Statistical Service. Unemployment is over 13.5%. At the time you were making noise, unemployment was below 6%. Today, yes, today, after just 6 years, you've taken this country back to 35 years, where we have to reference our unemployment and compare it to military regimes. We are experiencing one of the worst inflation. So what about the socio-economic impact did you use the 1.2 billion for? And you cannot make very general statements like these and say that it amounts to accounting. I'm sure Honorable is here. No accountant worth his salt or a finance person worth his salt will use statements without numbers, breakdown, figures to say that I am accounting. Not even lawyers who we are known to be, I mean, we are known for using words who account in the manner in which this finance minister, and I mean, the weakest of the already weak arguments about the 1.2 billion is that they used it to help us gain self-reliance. This one, I want to read it. To inspire the expansion of our domestic capability and deepen our self-reliance. Big English, nothing to show. Which self-reliance? When we are importing gari, today we are importing gari from China, we are importing cassava, we are importing practically everything. So which self-reliance? You use 1.2 billion to make us self-reliant, and yet when inflation is 27.3, you tell us to blame Russia, Ukraine. What kind of oxymoronic governance is this? You've used so much money to make us self-reliant, and yet we are supposed to blame external people for our economic woes. And I think that this statement was rushed because the speaker had indicated that without the finance minister coming to account, Parliament was not going to consider any business from that ministry. And so they had to just come and throw something at Parliament. And like Solo would say, you said you wanted account, you said you wanted account, we've given you. Now, apart from that, let me take you to paragraph 12. The government says that it used $200 million to secure vaccines. I want to find out whether from this $200 million, and I would be happy if Solo answers this question, whether the Sputnik V, which the government inflated at 90%, the World Health had warned everybody that do not buy Sputnik V or vaccines above $10 per dose. This government, in their opulence and corruption, said that, oh, even though everybody else is buying it at $10, we want to buy it at $19. And you saw the mess that came out of that inquiry in Parliament. At a point, the health minister said he wasn't even thinking when he was awarding the contract. So I want to find out this morning whether this $200 million included the monies that were paid to Sheikh Akmutu or whoever, because there is no table that shows that 20,000 doses of Sputnik V were purchased, because the last time we checked, we never received any Sputnik V. And if you look at the vaccines that the government mentioned it purchased, it said it purchased Janssen, Sputnik V, and covers 2 or so. Those are the, yes, covers 2. Now, I want to find out if you have purchased these vaccines. We want to know the quantity. Because the last time we checked, in the most embarrassing manner, the president was in France blaming them of hoarding vaccine. And we received Pfizer for free, we received Johnson & Johnson for free, we received Moderna for free. So you cannot bring these omnibus statements to Parliament and say that we use this amount of money to buy vaccine. We need to know the breakdown and what is the quantity of vaccine, because the last time I checked, we had a lot of vaccines, free vaccines. So let nobody hide their penchant and desire for corruption under very vague statement like we use this, we use this. We are not interested in what you use the money for. We want the breakdown of the specifics you claim you use the money for, because anybody can say anything and go away. And while we were in pains about how our monies were being used and the revelations that came out of the stinking Sputnik V, the president went and on a platform made a joke about it. It was a joke. If if millions of cedis have gone down through corruption, oh, the president said, health minister, oh, bro. That is the level of unseriousness that this government attaches to governance. For them, governance is just a way or a means to some personal ends. Governance is never about making the lives of the people better. And this perception is engraved in how they make their decision. Because you see, in the area of health infrastructure, if you go to paragraph 18A, this government says it has used 1.3 billion cedis for health infrastructure. For a government that has not built a single district hospital, a single polyclinic, a single hospital, I mean regional hospital or teaching hospital, this government has, they don't have any anywhere that they have completed and they can hand over to you. Wants us to believe that during COVID in 2020 and 2021, the monies they have used for health infrastructure is equal to the money that President, is almost equal to the money that President Mahama used for UGMC, which is a 620-bed hospital and Ridge Hospital. And I am scandalized that this can act. I am not only scandalized, but I am scared that in all these we can look the citizens in the face and tell them that even though you were confronted with a pandemic that had the potential of taking your life, we didn't build any hospital. We could not build anything. If you take any constituency, and whereas they couldn't build hospital, they could share money for their constituency executives and parliamentary candidates. At least we've been told by one. And I've heard another communicator on TV say she only got 50,000 during the COVID. So I'm sure they were in the sharing of the 50,000 spree. I hope those kind of sharing have not been captured under health infrastructure. Because obviously without the breakdown, we are allowed to make any insinuations if you don't give us a breakdown.
It's an insinuation.
Now, to make matters worse, Sena, do you know that from this statement, the government used more money to buy fuel to convey health workers within Accra, Tema, Kumasi, and Kaswa. It used 2 million cedis to buy fuel and rent buses for health workers than it used in purchasing PPEs for health workers. Twice the money used to purchase PPEs for health workers whose lives and the lives of their families are at risk, the government used twice of that money for lorry fare. And this is captured in their own paragraph 29. I am not saying it. This is the statement. And so we want to know how many buses were rented, because the last time I checked, Metro Mass Transport has not made a profit or an inflow of even 2 million cedis. So if you say that you use 2 million cedis and you use Metro Mass Transit, and the cash inflows are Metro Mass, we are told they are on the verge of collapse. Not just Metro Mass. Which other bus? You use Ayalolo.
You are just keeping it.
So that is the kind of worry that this government saw COVID, and I have made the point consistently that COVID-19 appears to have brought us 2 pandemics in Ghana: the health pandemic and the corruption pandemic. Because for the first time, I haven't seen any government have the kind of boldness and effrontery that this government has to dip their hands into state resources under the guise of a health pandemic and run the country down in the manner in which this government has run the country down. No government has had that courage, not even the military regimes. And so something doesn't add up. It is heartbreaking that for all what we wanted the finance minister to come and account for, he would throw this at us and say that this is what you have. And you see, to quote Dr. Baumia, when the fundamentals are weak, even your accounting, which are in words and not in figures, will expose you. Because we are told that out of that COVID funds that government received, they transferred 1.5 million to statutory funds. You got money that you said you wanted to use for COVID. And then you say that you transfer. So what happened to our taxes? Because the law says that a percentage of the revenues collected for and on behalf of government will go into these statutory funds. And let nobody deceive you that during COVID, there were revenue shortfalls. Because during COVID, we made more revenue, surprisingly, than the revenue we even made pre-COVID. And so when you hoard money, when you take the money that belongs to the people under the guise of COVID, and you bring us omnibus accounting words to account for it, your parliamentary primaries and your primaries as constituency regional levels will expose you. Because I have seen a petition from one of the contestants in Ashanti region that said that bullion vans were brought for monies to be shared. That is it. So you will have a 27% inflation in the system because members of your party have monies they've not worked for. And so they don't know the value of money. And so there will be a lot of money chasing fewer goods, coupled with, your mismanagement of the cedi and the rate of depreciation. You would have a lot of inflation. And the moment you have that kind of high level inflation, we will be where we are. We are in an economic mess. We are in a deep economic crisis. And I was hoping that the finance minister will come and prove some of us wrong with the statement and show us in very vivid ways how the monies have been used. But in fact, he has confirmed every perception and opinion we have formed about him. Because it is just unconscionable that you would lump everybody together and present these figures, which you have already presented to Parliament in your 2021 budget, in your 2022 budget. So it was merely a repetition. Parliament had those figures. And so if they called upon you to come and account, they wanted details. And I've heard people say that the Auditor General should account or should audit these institutions. Let me ask Solo and his people. The other time when the Auditor General found out that between 2017 to 2020, some 33 billion cedis have gone down the drain by way of financial irregularities, what did you do about it as a government? You didn't do anything. You didn't do anything about it. The other day when Parliament found out that your minister had inflated the cost of Sputnik V and monies have been paid in the most unconscionable manner, what did your government do about it? Your government didn't do anything about it. So you are taking us to the Auditor General so that your government will not do anything about it. Then the COVID money is a closed chapter. But I want to tell Solo that crime has no expiry date. And when accounts are audited, it can be re-audited. And so let the MPP not deceive themselves that merely because the finance minister has presented a 15-page document, the issue of COVID expenditure is a closed chapter. It is not a closed chapter. Some of us would champion it. Some of us would champion that it should be reopened. Because you see, the MPP is giving every politician a bad name. Not all politicians are as corrupt as you people. And so, for some of us also in politics, we must not sit down for some people to give a bad name. Because when something happens, when the youth get tired of the system, when the frustration becomes that they cannot be contained, they will lump everybody together as politicians and everybody will be harmed. And so let's not some politicians who have made it a business to be running a procurement economy, who have made it a business to find money anywhere without a shred of some level of conscience, without a level of some level of restriction. This government has no brakes. They don't know when to say enough is enough. They don't know when to say the money is not for us, it's for the people of Ghana. Every time they see a procurement opportunity, every time they see that opportunity, and it is at least sad. And I want to conclude by saying that you can see that the mess in the accounting is evident by the contrasting figures given by the president, the vice president, and now the finance minister. Because in the statement, or in the 2021 budget, the finance minister told us that $100 million was used to procure face masks, hand sanitizers, Veronica buckets. When you convert it, at the time the cedi was 6 cedis, and so 600 million. In this statement, the finance minister says that now they have used 1.1 million. So which one should we take? 2 years after we've experienced COVID, you cannot account, because of course when you carry money and you give to your constituency executive, you will not record it in the book, and so you will not be able to account. And it is most unconscionable. And let nobody think that this COVID expenditure is politics, because if hospitals were built out of the billions of cedis that the government received, the woman who died because there were no equipment in the hospital, that woman's life would have been saved. And let no one be deceived that it is politics, because when jobs are created, people will not become jobless. And so when we speak in the hope that lives will be better. Because when you get to the fuel pump, you don't know who is NPP and you don't know who is NDC. Solo doesn't buy fuel with his NPP card. We buy fuel as Ghanaians. When we get to the market to buy food, we buy food as Ghanaians. And so when the country is good, it is good for everybody. And when it is as terrible as it is, we all will suffer the consequence. And so I would say that even in the spirit of good governance, even in the spirit of humanity, we have a duty to do the right things, especially those who have been put in charge of money. Because public funds are not personal funds. Merely because you had an opportunity, because the president is your cousin, they don't make you more blessed than anybody, and does not also confer any special rights on you to use money in anyhow. And so I would say that let government see this COVID-19 as a feedback. Monies which have to be retrieved must be retrieved, because copiously missing is a private fund that was set up. We don't know how much of where that money is. We don't know whether it is that money that has been used to pay for the cathedral. We don't know whether it is that money that David Ajayi received, the $23 million that we are told he should be paid. We don't know whether it is out of that money. And so government must come forward with the specific. And I will want to urge the members of the NDC on the Finance and Health Committee that they should subject this government to strict proof, because it appears to me that the government knows that 2024 they are on their way out. And so they will do everything in their power to run the country down. And we should not allow it, because when we inherit a very terrible economy, there isn't so much we may be able to do to change the lives. And for we in NDC, it is about development agenda, which we have demonstrated. Because at the time, Dr. Bawumia was everywhere saying that if they had even half of the money that President Mahama used to build Rich Hospital and UGMC, they would have converted Ghana into a Dubai medical city. Today, you have double of that money. You've not been able to even convert Ghana into an Abidjan village city. And so we all have it a duty, and if you are watching me this morning, whether you are NDC, whether you are MPP, whether you are CPP or apolitical, we have a duty to hold government responsible, because we are the bereaved if the government decides to be irresponsible as we are experiencing under this government.
Okay, see, Komla says anyone who has not come from Ofori, is it? Okay, Orinenyan clan, which is mentioned in a Japadia book, but decides to defend Konoforata on the COVID fund misappropriations worse than the slaves that were taken from our shores against their wish. I wonder if these people have conscience, fear of God, and are proud that their families and friends are watching them displaying such a level of dishonesty, he says. Oblavin Pokwasi Bengaz is also joining us. Says special prosecutor should stop going to work because we don't see his actions. Politicians are still stealing money. President Akufo-Addo is still wasting our money on private flights, which is financial loss to the state. They are all walking around free. Kizito Intema is joining us. He says, so it's not the size of the mouth that will show how fast you can eat. I'm surprised calling NDC due diligence and vigilant that they are being, okay, as propaganda. Did he hear himself when he was ranting? When the MPP parliamentary candidate alleged that she has been giving 100,000 cedis on the COVID funds and other regional executive, was he in Ghana? This incompetent Nanado and Baumia government has chopped our monies and have to render proper account and stop this sycophantic and ignoramus comment. How can he defend this mess by the finance minister? From my end at Dowenya, I received the so-called free power and water after 6 months. I went and paid all the accumulated power used before my power was restored back, and same as water. Thank you very much for that message. Then there are other messages from Hadi in Pickfam, who is joining us. Says it's embarrassing as the day goes by. Too many rots in the system. This government is just doing very good in the things they spoke against some years back, to the extent that they are being corrupt on their own pledge to Allah Almighty. Allah is soaking their canes in kerosene. That's from Hadi in Pickfam. This one is from Musa Abatwa, who says, I totally support the decision to probe COVID-19 expenditures and other related issues because the explanations by the finance minister are not adding up. Nose mask, paper tissues, and hand sanitizers alone cost taxpayers $100 million, and 7 billion cedis cannot be accounted for. They lack vision to manage this country, but they have PhD in corruption. Dennis Yakwete says the finance minister certainly cannot be the one to account for the details of the COVID-19 money and expenditure of same thereof. But as to whether the finance minister can be said not to be complicit in the misapplication of the said fund, only time will tell us, as the fact-finding committee will unravel that. But as somebody who works at the grassroots, I can't wait to see district assembly summoned to appear before the said committee to account for how they use the COVID-19 money. Because per my experience, I just like the Ghana 50 experience. Heaven will come down and kiss the earth. As for the great minister, the least said about him, the better, as he appears to be living in his own world. Is that right?
Well, look, I mean, the issue before us is a very simple one. It's not complicated at all. It is interesting to go over the figures, to see the inconsistencies and so on. But I think that there are fundamental issues which are so very simple to understand. And I'm going to dwell on that. It is so simple that I'm not even going to spend a lot of time. I'm going to spend a very little time, bring the issues out very clearly. You see, the first time that the issue came up in Parliament, when the so-called minority in Parliament asked for accounting, the majority side resisted. And they resisted so fiercely. In fact, their position was that there was no need for accounting at that time. That we should wait for the Auditor General to do his work and just dwell on the Auditor General's report. There needn't be any special accounting for COVID funds. And I think it's important for us to understand this. There was resistance to the finance minister
coming to Parliament to account for COVID funds. That's number one. Now, number two, it took a lot of efforts, including massive display of anger by the public, to get the finance minister to go and read this 15-page document. You remember? Radio presenters really had to go bonkers. People were calling into radio stations very angry. Even MPP members were so angry that the finance minister was displaying a certain level of reluctance. So the question is, why? Why was the finance minister so reluctant to go to Parliament and account for what to all, is public funds? What is it that they didn't want Parliament to know? What is there that they were so strongly struggling to prevent Parliament from getting access to? For me, this is fundamental, okay? Now, the finance minister goes to Parliament, he reads a 15-page statement, and at the end of it, there's no clarity at all. There's more confusion than existed before he went to Parliament. Why is there no clarity? The figures, as contained in the 2020 budget, 2021 budget, don't simply tally. The set of figures in the 2020 budget are different from the set of figures in the 2021 budget. They don't tally at all. What explains this? That's a big issue. What explains this? Put that one aside. The figures given by the president and the figures given by the finance minister don't tally. So what explains this confusion? Something must explain this confusion. In any event, are we beginning to understand why the finance minister was reluctant to go to Parliament? It is clear. The figures simply don't add up. The revenues don't add up. The expenditure doesn't add up, and so on. Mess. I'm not giving the figures because all of you have given the figures already. But clearly, these figures don't add up. And if figures don't add up, we need to find out why the figures don't add up. But, Sena, very simple. This is not complicated at all. A member of the New Patriotic Party, not from the opposition, not from the CPP, not from PNC, not from NDC, a member of the New Patriotic Party, a parliamentary candidate of the New Patriotic Party, has come out voluntarily. She was under no compulsion to say what she said. He said, these COVID funds, me alone, I took 100,000 Ghana cedis out of the COVID funds as first installment. We don't know how much was paid in the second installment. We don't know whether there was a third installment or there was a fourth installment. The first installment, me alone, I took 100,000. And this woman says that the 100,000 she took, one was given to her because she was an executive member of the party at the constituency. Another 50,000 was given to her because she was a parliamentary candidate. Okay? Was she lying? If she was lying, what was she trying to achieve? Did she speak the truth? And if she spoke the truth, it's very easy to do the calculations. One, the assumption then is that every parliamentary candidate got 50,000 Ghana cedis into their back pockets. How many parliamentary candidates are we talking about? And that's not difficult. 275. So you multiply 275 by 50,000. And you get a clear idea how much of the COVID fund ended up in the pockets of parliamentary candidates. I'm not the one saying this. Now, she says that, and she's not the chairperson of the party in the constituency. She says that for just being an executive member, she got 50,000 into her back pocket. So, how many are we talking about? 7 executive members per constituency? So you ought to multiply 250 by 7 by 50,000. And then you add it to 275 by 50,000. The money is finished. The COVID money finished before they started. My brother, it's very simple. I'm not sophisticated like you at all. No. I like to do my things in very simple ways. Here is an MPP member, parliamentary candidate, saying, me, I got 50,000 of the COVID money for being a parliamentary candidate. There are 275 constituencies which you contested in the last election. So if every member, every parliamentary candidate got 50,000, all you do is to multiply 50,000 by 275 to give you how much went to the parliamentary candidates. Assuming that they all got 50,000. In fact, if the seniors got more, then 50,000 would have been the least. You understand? But let us assume that all of them got 50. So that gives you an idea of how much money went to parliamentary candidates. As I said, me, I was an executive member of the party. And they gave me an additional 50,000. You know how your executives are constituted in the constituencies. The key ones are 7. So me, I'm ignoring even those who are appointed and so on. Just ignore all of them. So that is 7 times 275 times 50. And that is assuming that the chairman, secretary, treasurer, and all got the same amount. If the chairpersons got more, maybe we are saying a coupon. Hey! I'm just. These are all assumptions that cannot be substantiated. Okay. So, what do? Put this 15-page document aside. Because this 15-page document does not tell us about how much of the money went into the last elections. This 15-page document does not tell us what regional executives got and so on. So put it aside. Let's do simple mathematics. First of all, let us call this woman. Let us find out whether indeed she spoke the truth or she lied. You understand? If it's established that she spoke the truth, we have finished the case. Matter closed. You understand?
Your logical analysis said a very simple arithmetic. We are talking about 100 million.
Exactly.
These are not things that well, we are working on assumptions here.
So bring the specifics.
There is a report to be discussed.
No. My brother, don't crack your head at all.
There's a report
No, sir. Solo, you are sitting here. You are on this panel. You are a member of the communications team of the New Patriotic Party. You are not just a communicator. You are one of the most effective communicators of the party. And indeed, from what I know of you, you also happen to be a very key campaigner for Mr. Alan Martin that we all expect may emerge as flag bearer of the party. In your position, are you telling us that your parliamentary candidate is a liar? Can you say that?
What she has to prove.
Is she a liar? Did she lie?
To the best of my knowledge, parliamentary candidates were not given the amount. Maybe she was.
Is she a liar?
She is absolutely a liar. I mean, a complete liar. A complete liar. Because there is nowhere else to be surprised you continue when yes.
I've given you the chance.
When I start, maybe I'll not end.
I don't mind. For as long as we establish the truth, I'm happy.
The woman did not tell the world whether the supposed money she received, even came from COVID fund.
She said so.
She said so.
I mean, when the person I listened to her.
She said it.
You see,
you probably listened to
how did she know that money was COVID money?
That's between you and her.
That is a
problem. You asking me whether involved in sharing COVID money?
This is someone who was just blowing her own horns. Sometimes in party politics, you are not even giving anybody anything. So me, you know they gave me this money.
Okay.
If today you bring it, and it will be unfair to generalize that because she received it by extension. Let's even assume she received something by extension.
Why are you assuming? Did she receive or she didn't receive?
Me, I'm not in a position. Maybe she lied. And I can see that she's a liar.
You can't even say that she's a liar.
Because she's blowing her horns. The report we have doesn't suggest we gave any party executive money. That is a report we have.
Whoa! Asamo Ghana. Asamo Ghana. Master, so you see how murky the situation is. Now, I've seen some things that look like accounts. Sena, we are being told that they supplied hot food and so on. And they're telling us the numbers of people who received the hot food. All of us, including Solo, we saw the videos of what was purported to be the distribution of hot food. Did you see anything in those videos which suggested that anybody was taking account of numbers and so on? I saw chaotic scenes of some trucks with some small food packed, on the deck. And I saw people struggling with each other, blowing each other, total commotion. And a few people would throw packets of food, small packets of food, throw it at the people, and confusion and so on. Yeah. So how did you know the numbers that you supplied hot food to and the numbers that received hot food when there was no system of accounting?
He said they used the caterer.
Oh, you kill us. You just kill us. Amba, what have we done to you? They're just killing us. So, Master, you see, what we have got into, Parliament in its wisdom has decided to merge two committees to go into these figures. Now, I'm hoping that this will not be reduced to a childish game of MPP versus NDC again. And that parliamentarians on both sides will take their responsibilities seriously and begin to raise the relevant questions and present a report to the people of Ghana. The work before the committee established by the Speaker is not a very complicated one. Very simple question. Finance Minister, this is the figure you have given us, okay? It is different from the figure that the President has given us. Explain to us how you are giving us a set of figures which are totally different from the figures given to us by the President. That's all. Finance Minister, explain to us whether indeed you made money available for MPP's presidential and parliamentary campaigns from COVID funds and so on. Very simple questions, straightforward questions. And if you're able to deal with this, fine. But you see, Solo, I'm going to test your honesty again.
Mr. Pratt, my honesty is richness.
When I finish, you will know.
Okay.
Is it true that at the time the minister was expected to account in Parliament, the minister was meeting MPP members of Parliament separately and secretly. Is that true?
Not that I know. I don't know about it.
So you don't know that the minister met NPP members of parliament before he came to parliament?
Met them. Obviously, he will meet them. Obviously.
So he met them.
But in terms of saying...
Do you know what happened at that meeting?
That one I don't know.
You mean you didn't bother to find out what happened at that meeting?
No, I don't know. That one I don't know what happened.
Hey, such a prominent communicator of the party.
Mr. Pratt, this one, the finance minister met parliamentarians.
And now he met them.
I mean, it's normal when you are going to parliament to meet your caucus.
And you don't know what happened at the meeting?
I don't know the details.
Did you notice that on such a crucial issue, where there was clear division and so on, a number of your MPs did not show up in parliament? Quite a large number did not show up in parliament.
Mr. Pratt.
No, it was obvious. I watched the presentation of the report. I watched it sitting in this office. I watched it. And it was obvious that a lot of MPs did not show up. There must be some reason why MPs did not show up. And you should know. You are one of the chief communicators of the party.
Mr. Pratt, you know everybody and the reason for not showing up in parliament. As Honorable is here, he can give you numerous reasons for not going to parliament. Sometimes they are even...
but when such a large number does not show up, knowing you and how you ensure that they appear in parliament, sometimes you can even drive ambulances to parliament. Sometimes private jets are involved in ferrying people to parliament and so on. On this occasion, your side of parliament didn't look full.
So what reason are you, or what motive are you impugning in this?
Well, I'm suggesting that some of the MPs may have been very angry at what was happening.
Maybe. And
decided, therefore, not to be part of the charade. But you are the best person to tell us the full facts.
We told Ghanaians that let the Auditor General audit the account so that the nitty-gritty will be made bare. After all, when the Auditor General makes the report, parliamentarians form a committee, a public accounts committee, to vet it, so that this matter will be settled once and for all. How this is panning out is going to be the same NPP NDC football. That is what it's going to be. That is why we cautioned that don't let us go this direction.
Sir, I don't have anything to say. I'm finished. Oh, you think I can say something? Nothing to say.
Very interesting. Okay, Charles is watching says, if you ignore the appointees and executives, you get 10 executive members outside the appointees.
So the money which went to the executive is even much bigger, or could be much bigger.
Your calculation.
Hey!
Well, before we move on to the next discussion, this is coming from Albert Otogbe, who says the 2020 Auditor General's report on MDAs doesn't have a single mention of COVID. So there's a special audit being undertaken by the Auditor General into COVID expenses that people keep referring to. COVID expense is a special expenditure and requires a special audit. Or, well, he is making the point that if the Auditor General is auditing the accounts of MDAs and MMBAs, he doesn't go looking for COVID money. What he does is monies that come in and monies that have been spent. So those monies can be put into a general category, making it difficult for you to differentiate the COVID money from the other monies that came in, from the other monies that were spent. So if you want to do that, you have to do a special audit.
They have to do. If that is what to help all, yeah, they have to do it.
Well, a few more messages. This one says the National Cathedral is sitting on a 14-acre land, whilst the Burj Khalifa is sitting on a 500-acre land, and also the tallest building in the world. The architectural design of the National Cathedral cost $21 million, and the Burj Khalifa architectural design cost the people of Dubai $1.8 million. Indeed, our government, well, Eddie Gideon joins us. Okay. Says, Sena, good morning, Sena. This government and accountability, that's all he says. There's Mohammed Kabaris reminding us that we are live on True FM. They are picking Alhaji and Alhaji, and I know. Positive Change in Medina has also joined us. He says, looking at how Ghana's economy is going down, any man that has an erection needs to be arrested.
Debt to GDP ratio is 84%. Unemployment rate is 13.6%. Inflation is 27.6, and dollar to the CD is also 8.2, 8.8 cedis, 20 pesos. Ghana is really at the crossroads. Let me go to Facebook and do a few messages, then we'll jump into our next discussion. What you're saying about the issues we are discussing currently on the matter of the finance minister appearing before Parliament. Don't forget there's a committee that's supposed to do some work. But some messages from those of you who are joining us and listening to us. This one is from Sapiabo. Says, can you remind Solomon that the finance minister can provide figures for monies received and expenditure without necessarily providing a breakdown? And that's what he did. We are all living witnesses of a regional vice chairperson and parliamentary candidate who admitted on video how they received COVID monies, COVID funds, and shared it among themselves. Was this also captured in the report of the finance minister? I hope Parliament will invite that woman to come and explain the rationale behind the video. Udeluche is also talking about video. I hope you all have seen the viral video of a schoolboy campaigning for the position of a school prefect. Okay, what Solomon and his likes are doing is exactly what the young students think politics is about. Habib Bantu says the finance minister can never account for any COVID-19 funds today nor tomorrow, but the monies was shared like Gary at Malamata Market. So I rise Ghana youth to demonstrate massively on 28th and 29th June to this corrupt, nepotistic under Kufuor and the Baumia government. There's also some more messages. Well, let's jump to the next discussion. I'll come back and do a few more.
Yeah, can I quickly...
Then why won't I introduce you for the next topic?
Yeah.
You can
see
sure. What, so the next issue we are discussing is the matter of the agric minister. I'm sure you've watched the video. And I have been particularly shocked at some of the things he said. But anyway, he says planting for food and jobs is 100% effective. As far as he is campaigning to be the flag bearer of the new patriotic party. His only trump card is what is done at the agric ministry for now. And he's blowing his own horns. Go. Minister.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Just to add to something Kwesi said about basically some of the things that hopefully we will be asking in Parliament. And all these numbers flying around, the simple questions that the finance minister needs to come and answer is that in 2021 or in 2020, you said you raised, and that's the report, you said you raised 18.19 billion. You spent 8.1 billion or 8.12 billion. The difference is 10.07 billion. What did you do with that money? Number two, in 2021, you said you raised 4.5 billion. You spent 3.91 billion. What did you do with the 590 million? The next one is, in your report, you said you spent 12.3 or 12.03, which is the 8.12 and 3.19, giving us 12 billion. But in the budget of 2021, you said you spent 18 billion. So where is the difference? Or why do we have that discrepancy? Then we have three numbers that we need to reconcile. One of them is Nana Akufo-Addo's 17.7 billion that he mentioned at the State of the Nation address against the finance minister's current 12 billion and previous 18 billion. Then, two more. IMF gave us initially in 2020, gave us 1 billion, the initial stages of the COVID. And this is from the Ministry of Finance own website. On the 27th of August, 2021, the finance minister announced that they have received $1 billion from the IMF as an SDR, that is special drawings. Now let me just read the first portion. Ghana, Accra February 27th, August 2021, Ghana has received the equivalent of 1 billion from the International Monetary Fund, being its share of the new special drawings SDR allocation to boost the post-COVID economic recovery for member countries. Where is that money? It doesn't feature anywhere here in the report. Yet you've given us 2020 and 2021 report. The money was received in August, and nobody knows what. Then we found out, and he has now reported, when they told us we got 100 billion from the World Bank, the World Bank director came out and said it was 430. Now, in this report, they have reported correctly that they received 230 from the World Bank, and then they got a special or additional financing of 200 million. They have just mentioned here, but it's not anywhere in the tables that they've provided. That additional money, the 1 billion from the IMF plus the 200 million from the World Bank, should give us 1.2 billion, which is equivalent to about 8 billion Ghana cedis. If you add that to the 22, that's 30. Where is that money? So these are the simple questions that need you to come and answer before we go into the details of what the money was used for and which assemblyman or parliamentary candidate got what they got. And the question is a logical thing. If somebody says, and she did say that as a parliamentary candidate, I was given 50,000. So the assumption is that probably every parliamentary candidate got 50,000. He said, as an executive member, I got an additional 50,000, which means that executive members also get, whether they are 7 or 10, but based on 7, we are looking at 100 million here. But those will be the questions that, because this goes beyond what is being presented here in this document. So that's what I want to add to, some of the things that we'll be looking at, in Parliament as to where all these monies are.
Okay. On the matter of that, Minister.
A Greek minister. Look, this is the only country, Ghana, that, and at the moment, we are the only country that I know, at least our peers, that we have this special program called Planting for Food and Jobs, which one would expect that if we have taken such an initiative, then that means that hopefully since 2017 up until now, we should be sufficient when it comes to food and food security. When you look in a budget and you look at, I think, Appendix 9A of the last year's budget, 2021, you have a table there that tells you the contribution of each sector to GDP. So agri contribution, industry contribution, service sector, and all that. When you look at the agri sector, and agri is broad, when you have fisheries and other things there that themselves are not doing well. But let's just take, when they say planting for food and jobs, let's just limit ourselves to crops. That's what they're supposed to be planting. Ghana is the only country, according to that table, the more we plant, the less we harvest. The contribution of crops to GDP since 2017, and it's their own document, has been declining. Not because other sectors are doing well. In fact, in the next 3 years, in the same budget, that figure is supposed to stay at 5.5 for the next 3 years. So I don't know whether that's where the planting peaks. So it tells you clearly that planting for food, you don't have to go and stand. Which market did he go to? Well, I don't know whether Techima is where they collect the what is it called, food inflation basket. It tells you clearly, and two things that you look at that tells you that that program is not working and we don't have a food security. is that the growth contribution that is coming from crops is been declining. So something is going wrong there. Then you come to the inflation itself. Ukraine war started only in February, and towards the end of February. Before then, the 3 or 4 previous inflation figures were all going up. And the bulk of it was to do with food inflation. That also clearly tells you that food prices were going up. In the abundance of food, you would expect prices to go down. So these are alarm, they are economic indicators, but they are alarm bells to tell you that something is not going right. So it is not surprising. Then after February, that's when you bring in transportation. Obviously, getting the food from the farm gate to the market. Then you have, it needs to be transported, logistics and all that. So the inflation coming from crude or coming from petrol prices will then feed in there, because it's that figure that feeds into transportation, and that will increase the transportation cost. So the food inflation has 2 components. One inflation is directly to do with the food itself, and then there's the element that is to do with the transportation of the food. Then you have inflation on its own in terms of the petroleum product, and that's what gives you wherever we've gotten to now. We are heading towards 30-something% in the next month. So I don't know who the Agric minister is talking to, and I really don't know who he talks to when he goes to market. He's the same person who gave us a price of a plantain some time ago. So he's basically out of touch. He's probably spending more time doing his presidential campaign than focusing on agriculture. And there's nothing that he said about the situation in Ghana at the moment that seems to be in line. I really don't think he knows what he's talking about at this stage in terms of what is happening in Ghana's economy, particularly in the area of food and the food inflation that we have at the moment. And look, Ukraine war that we've talked about, there's no doubt that obviously there are external factors, and Ukraine war and even the, what is it called, the residual bit of even COVID also contributes to that. But the bulk of the inflation we are experiencing at the moment is to do with food, number one. Then, of course, the fuel, which I really don't understand why we can't get this fuel thing. The world prices are going up, but what the government is actually making more money from the crisis we are in than they did previously. For the simple reason that the petrol, the prices that, the fuel that comes into the country, that is the finished product by the BDCs and the oil marketing companies, it comes at no cost. So I get this again. It comes at no cost to government, or very little. During President Mahama's time, under the NDC government, we met subsidies that goes straight into petroleum. Those subsidies were at a cost to government because it was government who was subsidizing the fuel. So if fuel price at the pump was supposed to be $10, and the government is subsidizing, for argument's sake, 50% of it, then you will get the price at the pump at 5 cedis, not the 10 cedis that the BDCs or the oil marketing companies. So government absorbed that. We removed the subsidies because at that time it was expensive for government and all that. So we passed on what you call a market price direct to the consumer. So the BDCs who spend their money, they are in business to buy this petroleum products and bring them to this country and sell them. The reason why the price is going up is that the subsidy is no longer there. Therefore, we are paying, or we are feeling the direct impact of the crude, which is the driver of the price at the pump. If there is any cost at all, it's a very small cost. The Bank of Ghana money that they claim they have put together so that these companies will get the dollars to be able to bring the oil in, it's not a free money from government to the oil companies. They are paying for it. So what is the government upfront cost in bringing petroleum product into this country? Now, if you look at the price build-up itself, again, the government is making more money from the price build-up in a sense that the product here is crude, which fits into this calculation of price at the pump. If the petrol, the reason why once the crude prices continues to go up, the price at the pump will also increase. Something like a linear relationship or a quadratic, whatever you call it in mathematics. Now, the tax component, which is usually they say 2% or 3% or whatever, is a coefficient of this parameter called the crude oil. So anytime the crude oil goes up, all the parameters in your build-up formula that relates to the price you pay at the pump will also go up. But the tax themselves as a rate doesn't go up. But because the parameter is going up, then the tax revenue from petroleum product to government increases without necessarily increasing the rate. So anytime the oil price is going up, now the government has established a revenue in the budget that we project or a forecast that oil prices are going to be around, say, $63. So the finance minister and his team, and we've done this work many times, the finance minister and his team will sit down and calculate the volumes of petroleum product that will come into the country, the price at which they expect crude to be, and the rate of tax that they have attached to it. When you do that calculation, it will give you the tax revenue that government expects to come from petroleum products or the price sale at the pump to government based on 63. So if the price begins to go up, the extra that comes on top, say price was 63, now the price is 100, so you have like 27 extra. 27 multiplied by whatever your tax rate is a money that the government did not anticipate. So that is an extra money coming to government. That's the front end. At the back end, Ghana is also an oil producing nation. They say we are a net, what is it called, importers of oil. Look, when it comes to this calculation, being a net importer or a net exporter doesn't really matter, because the balance sheet for petroleum product is a different balance sheet from crude product. So Ghana has two balance sheets when it comes to the whole petroleum thing. The one is what I've given you, the front end one. The back end one is we've joined an oil producing nation, so we produce oil and sell. We don't produce oil to consume. The oil we produce, we don't consume it because we don't refine it here to consume. So whether you are a net importer or a net exporter at this stage when it comes to the calculation doesn't really matter. So you get your crude, and there are different players. At the front end you have BDCs, OMCs. At the back end you have the Talos, the explorers, and government, and the GNPC. They have a different balance sheet. So they send oil out. The same applies. They also make a projection, the same projection in the budget that says oil prices are going to be, the forecast is going to be around 63, is the same that applies at the back end. So if oil price becomes 100, then GNPC, Talo, and TENS are going to make a windfall, of which government of Ghana has a percentage. That percentage at $100, I think today when I checked, it's about 112 or something. It's been over 100 for some time now. But you average it, 100, that is estimated to bring to the coffers of Ghana almost 450 to 500 million US dollars. Now, the question is, why should consumers be suffering when we have a government that has the tools to at least temporarily, for this situation that we are in, to bring back some kind of a subsidy with a sunset clause to remove them when hopefully their Ukraine war that they use subsides. When that is done, then they can remove it back. So we have almost about 500 million, and then on the front end, government is making money that all put together, they can use some kind of a lever to adjust the price. Because you don't, if they say they can't do anything about the tax because the tax, when they touch it, it will affect their revenue. No, it won't. It won't, because the parameter upon which you are charging the tax itself is moving. So whatever your target is of revenue you are going to get, when that price, when that crude moves up, you gain from there, and you can use it to cushion the people, and so that it doesn't continue. Otherwise, what is going to happen is that it won't be long by the end of the year, because the MPP Ukraine Russian war is not going to finish anytime soon, which means they are not going to stop using it as an excuse anytime soon. And if something is not done, the basis of the inflation, food and the energy, very soon the energy will surpass the food, because it contributes also to the food inflation. And we will get to a point where the job that this job is a fiscal job, meaning that it's a job that needs to be done by government, the Ministry of Finance and the Finance Minister, so that we can halt inflation from the supply side and cost. Because the inflation we're experiencing is not a demand inflation. So the tool of Bank of Ghana, where they use interest rates to try and take heat out of the system. When you have high inflation, what the economists call, the economy is overheating.
No, but you have to learn from it.
Okay, I will land here. So when you take that overheating out with that lever, but that lever is not working now, because where the inflation is coming from, it's not a demand-driven inflation, it's a supply. So if you sit at Bank of Ghana and you increase interest rate by 200 basis points, 250 basis points, you are doing aggressive monetary policy rate, which in the long run is going to increase your lending rate, slow down your economy, and eventually will put you in a recession.
Okay, thank you. Honorable, before I come to you, this is a little about says after listening to Dr. Nyaho Tamakulu, a senior member of the MPP, I realized that the MPP themselves, they failed Ghanaians. A crocodile will not come out of pond to give out a message to those at the riverbank for them to render what the crocodile said as lies.
The Agri Minister's statement, let me start from where Honorable ended. I agree with him that this issue of increasing base rates, I disagree with the Bank of Ghana, and that is one of the problems that the governor is creating for our government, and that the earlier we took a decisive decision about this governor, the better for this government. It is also true, I like the way he was frank, that this whole government, NDC, that indeed when they came to meet subsidy that was on petroleum, and by their deregulation policy, they removed it. And so when you remove subsidy as NDC, then what you are saying is that every price increase has to be passed on to final consumer. And I think that is a frank position. You want to speak for him? Every tax that is placed on petroleum passes through Parliament, and parliamentarians are the ones that gives us these taxes to pay. And so if as a country we think that indeed where we have gotten to, there is no need for us to continuously have all these taxes on petroleum, it is something that we can do. And I'm very happy as a former Minister of Finance. We have gone through these problems before, and he knew at then that they couldn't do what they are suggesting, that in their time they did not Even though they came to meet subsidy, they took subsidy out and then gave us taxes. And so it's not today that it's going to change. In terms of what the Minister of Agri said, yes, it's true that when you go to the market, there are food. I mean, if you want plantain, you will get. If you want rice, you will get. Whatever you are looking for, you will get. Yes, it is true that the Planting for Food and Jobs is a beautiful policy. It is one of the policies that, you know, if you look at our policy synchronization, the idea is to produce more raw material from agriculture to feed the one district, one factories that we are creating all around the country. And let me here say that on Monday, the Minister of Finance is also launching the 67 business resource centers, and Pan-Africa TV must endeavor to cover it for us. So the idea is to produce more raw material from Planting for Food and Jobs so that it can feed the industries that we are creating. What is affecting us now is the transportation element of pricing. That price of crude, and for that matter fuel, has gone up so much that transport cost that is added to food has created all this inflation. It is for us as a country to tackle that aspect. But the minister said something that for me was disappointing, and we have to be frank to ourselves. As a Minister of Finance, you say you are now trying to convince people to be giving farmers loans, to be doing farming. What are we doing to ourselves as a country? That we have Agricultural Development Bank that is supposed to advance. What is the name of that bank? Agricultural Development Bank. It's not Mining Development Bank. Neither is it KZT Development Bank. It is Agric. And it is high time we let banks understand the purpose for which they are established. That they begin to advance monies to these farmers. And not just advance, at low interest rates. That's why I said I agree with him on his earlier submission that the decision to increase the base rate is what is killing us as a country. So that even today, if the banks decide to advance monies to these farmers at the rate that we are doing, you will still have prices. They can have bumper harvest, but the prices of those foods that will be produced will still be high because they will need to go and pay high interest rate. Let me just say that though our interest rate is far better than the NDC, I believe it's unconscionable, and we must fight as a country to reduce it to the barest minimum so that we can all have some breather. In Sena, the Minister of Agric has to be up and doing. And let me say that the arise for Ghana, because you will not have time to come back to me again, and let me so that I can conclude my submission. Their decision to go on demonstration is becoming one too many. One too many in the sense that the young men of today, young politicians of today, want to use the avenue of demonstration to always generate or mobilize revenue. I'm in the game and I'm telling you, you will be there, they will go and bring lofty ideas. We have to go and demonstrate this. The budget that they will bring, go and check the Rise for Ghana budget that probably they would have submitted to these big men. Because they will tell you that we are going to mobilize people from across the country, transport costs, water costs, everything. You realize it is 5 million Ghana that people want to put in their pocket. Either than that, not too long ago, the NDC did Yentria on e-levy. This demonstration is also about e-levy. The NDC was the one that removed subsidy and brought in deregulation. This demonstration is about periodic increase of fuel. So what are we talking about? Let us be serious as a country and let truth lead us rather than money. Money that always we want to use these kind of demonstrations to collect more money into our pocket. I'll end it here.
Thank you. Is your name Sonny Rocky?
That is my school name.
Okay, so Haruna Jibril here. Haruna Jibril sent a message. He used the name. He said he is such a vibrant and versatile communicator. Our great MPP of our great MPP party. We are proud of you. Continue to make us proud. Besides, we are committed to breaking the 8 with Alan Kojo.
Yeah, Alan. Go to heaven.
Well, there are more messages. This is Michael Flu who says, kindly tell Solomon Owusu to stop shouting and speak to the topic. The NDC does not need to hold any press conference to bring their figures. They should stop bringing President John Dramani Mahama into this. They should come and account in detail, CD by CD, the COVID-19 funds. We know we are professionals and know what we say. There's also okay.
It's all attacks.
Oh no, the way. Well, Beatrice, let me come to you first.
Okay. So, Sena, because of time, we can combine the two topics. Yes. Because of time. Okay. So, I listened to the Minister of Agric, and his comments or interview is a reflection of the kind of recklessness we are seeing by way of governance. His comments is a reflection that people in charge of the country do not even appreciate the situation that we find ourselves. And the moment you can't tell what the problems are, obviously you cannot give a solution. And so, I mean, coming events cast their shadows. We can only tell the kind of mess we will find ourselves in the next 2.5 years. Because you see, agriculture is predominantly the economic means of most people in Ghana. And sometimes this government behaves as though the whole Ghana is Accra. But if you leave Accra, you realize that, and I read a World Bank report that suggested that even more women are into agriculture than men in Ghana. Only that the nature is subsistence. And the work the men do is to do the land clearing. So if you have a country where with the advent of COVID, poverty is on the rise, and every macroeconomic indicator is showing that everything is not well, and the Agric Minister is asked how he will assess himself, and he tells us that the planting for food and jobs, he will give himself 100%. That day I didn't know what to do to myself, because it meant that he has lost touch. Because if it was 100%, it meant there was nothing to do. This was an Agric Minister that told us that donkeys had carried fertilizers, and although he could count the donkeys and the fertilizer, he could not prevent them from crossing the borders of Ghana. And the name of the program is planting for food and jobs. So I'll take food and I'll take job. Today, and Honorable Rikitegan has demonstrated that the more, the data shows that the more we plant, the less we harvest. Today we are importing everything. We are importing rice, chicken. The prices of food, the Ghana Statistical Service tells us, is 30.1%. I mean the rate of inflation. And it means that food prices are even higher than the average national inflation. And every serious economist worth his salt will be very worried. Because you see, food by its nature becomes inelastic in economics. You cannot say you will not eat food, whether you have money, you don't have money. So that's why you see people will go and rob sometimes, because they want to buy food. And so if you have food being the most, I mean, higher than the national average of prices of goods, any Agric Minister should be worried and not even sleep. Any serious Agric Minister, let me amend the statement, that should rather be the word. Any serious Agric Minister, because Agric is the drive of this economy. And any third world country such as ours, if you want to develop, you cannot take your Agric sector. Your government is giving tax cuts to a member of the Council of States who is importing chicken and things into the country. She's the owner of a company called La Bianca. What's the name of the member of the state? You're asking me. Because you are seeing it. Go and look for the owner of the company called La Bianca. The government has given her tax cuts by reason of being to import food. So if you have made a program planting for food and jobs, and you have 100%, and you are giving members of your parties tax credits to import and sell at a very cheaper rate than local producers, we are really doomed. We are really doomed. You see, it's as though we did something wrong to God, and the MPP government is a punishment that has been imposed on us. Because in every sector of the economy, something doesn't add up. It's not like you are doing well in manufacturing and you're not doing well in agri, so that we can say that perhaps you are focusing on manufacturing. The much touted one district, one factory, in the sector of manufacturing, you are doing 1.7 growth. In the sector of manufacturing, you've declined. You are declining. And so something doesn't add up about this government. And the inability of government officials to realize that we are in a crisis, the inability of government officials to realize that new times call for new measures, is what even baffles me. And so let's say that people who want to do demonstration, it is because they want to raise money.
Yeah. This current crop.
Solo should be the last person saying that as a member of the MPP, because the democratic dictator that they have imposed on us by way of President Nana Addo made his mark only because he led demonstrations. The only reason why he got all the title as a human rights activist, and sometimes I want to blame Uncle Chrissy Pratt because they were leading the demonstrations with them, and they made people believe that he had any respect for human rights. The man, in fact, he is even a walking contradiction, because the man who led the Kumikprekun demonstration against VAT, which today is the greatest beneficiary, and he's the one flying the luxurious private jet at 20,000 per pound from the VAT revenue, is the man who came to even impose e-levy. And so I want to call on every young person like me. If you are a young person, you knew that in 2016 you were buying fuel for 3 cedis 60 pesos per liter. Today you are buying fuel for 61 cedis a gallon. If you knew that bread, which was 3 cedis in 2016, today it is 15 cedis. You were earning 2,000 in 2016 and you could do something. Today you cannot even find the job. You were a worker at a bank. These people, when they came in consonance with their Ejapadia scheme, collapsed bank, families have been affected. Today you are home, from a banker to an unemployed person. If you know that you're a young person like me who never had the opportunity that Eugene Ayin had, that he was being taken care of by the wife, and in 3 years in government, in 3 years in government, he has built mansions and waterfronts. If you're a young person and your future is very important to you, you have a duty to join the demonstration on the 28th, because 28th and 29th, because, and the 28th it will start at 12, because until we send a signal to the president, I am sure his electric chair, the special chair, is not sending the right signal. And so until we come together and send the right signal that enough is enough, as young people, our future is at stake. As young people, do not take our COVID funds and share for your party executive. As young people, do not give 15 million to ABAJ. As young people, do not pat your health minister in the back. With all the corruption going on, the president should not be a clearing agent. It is about time we tell the president that the cost of his private jet can be used to build a classroom. It is about time we tell the president that the 23 million given to David Ajayi can change the destiny of millions of other young people who are equally as talented as David Ajayi. You need to join us to send a signal to the government that enough is enough. Because you know why? There is a famous statement that said that they came for the Jews. I did not care because I was not a Jew. They came for the socialist. I was not a socialist. They came for the unionist. I was not a unionist. I did not care. The day they will come for you, there will be nobody to speak for you. And so this is a civic responsibility. It is your constitutionally guaranteed right to demonstrate. And I will call on everybody to join us, because a better country is a better citizen. So please join us and let's send a signal to these arrogant guys in power.
Before I come to Uncle Kwesi, this is Kwesi Asedubuedi who says, okay, he says Solo was speaking the way he was speaking because the Greek ministers competing and land for MPP presidential candidature. Kinsley Kojo says, okay, as Mensa Wilson says, that's a fact, Solo. This Roger Banye Dauzi, I hope I got the name right, says the Russian-Ukraine war seems to have more negative impact on us, Ghana, than even the victims. Mr. Solomon should not be too economical with the truth. He's still young and has a bright future. God save us. There's with the BJS Solo, Akufo-Addo is the King Kong when it comes to demonstration. Is an unbeatable record. Zaka Abubakar says, Solo, please take it easy. Try to be low on tension. You say, Habib says, Solo, we shall demonstrate today, tomorrow, and until we defeat the crime in the system. Very interesting. Mr. Pratt.
There's so very little time, but it is sufficient to deal with the food crisis in Ghana and the boastfulness of our Agric minister. Indeed, the Minister of Agric is a very interesting person. He's so very interesting that I just love to listen to him, you know. Look, this is a guy who within the NPP is known as one of the closest persons to the president. No doubt. The relationship between him and the president goes way back. You understand? And then this person, who is so very close to the president, decides that when the president leaves office, he will take the president's seat. So he goes to Kumasi, and he starts his campaign. And what is his campaign? Very simple message. His campaign in Kumasi, very simple message. If Ashantis do not vote for an Ashanti as presidential candidate, they would never get their fair share of the national cake. What an indictment of the president. So, by his own reckoning, the government that he's part of has not been able to deliver for the Ashanti people. My goodness. Isn't this just beautiful? The Greek minister, he says his government has not done well for Ashanti. And that if they bring him in, he would improve the lot of the Ashanti people. And of course, we do know Ashanti's contribution to agriculture. So how has he fared in Ashanti? Let's put that one aside, you know. Now this Greek minister, he looked all of us in the face. All of us, he looked into our face and said, a bunch of plantain sells for 5 cedis. You remember? The guy is sitting there and he's dreaming. He's dreaming up achievements. A bunch of plantain, 5 cedis. Where? You know, the most beautiful part of it was the response from the market woman from Kotokroba market. I cannot repeat what the woman said. I'm sure you saw the video. That market woman from Kotokroba market gave a fitting response. Master, sometimes, look, we are sitting here. The Greek minister says that his achievement should be rated at 100%. When a ball of kenke has just jumped from 1 cedi to 4 cedis. It has not just jumped from 1 cedi to 4 cedis. So the size has also reduced. staple food. Have you tried buying red recently? Have you tried buying red recently? And but red at Kempinski, if you go and eat red at Kempinski, you will think that there's no Ghanaian economy. Not just that it has collapsed, but the economy has vanished. You understand? So this is how we measure success. The other time I heard him complaining about the fact that cocoa farmers are cutting cocoa trees and planting rubber. Complaining to who, me? Or to Solo? You're sitting there, Greek minister, go and do the job. There's a problem and then you are coming to sit on radio to complain like me. Me, I have a right to complain because I don't have power. You have all the powers, you are complaining even more than me. Abba! Master, also the Greek sector, they are portal. And they come up with some slogans. Planting for food and jobs. What else can you plant for? If you are not planting for food and jobs, what can you plant for? And they are so happy, chest up, planting for food and jobs. You plant for what? If it's not for food and jobs. Ghana. Afo, SSA. SSA. What is all this? And he will not leave us here. The man is not ready to leave us here. He's not ready to leave us to suffer the price of kinky. Bam. He wants to what? What do they say? Something 8. What do they say? How do they say?
Break the 8.
He wants to break the 8. And what we beg you, don't break the 8. We are begging you, don't break. Because if you break the 8, we will die. Hey, this man is going to break the 8. Even the 2 cry, look. The two cry, look at the price of KK. And he's going to break the 8 on top. Abba, have pity on us small and leave us here. Don't break the 8. Let's put him aside. Massa, arise demonstration. You see, when you're organizing a demonstration, you can have several objectives. And the objectives you have will determine how you organize the demonstration. You've seen that in some parts of the world, demonstrations have actually resulted in coup d'etats. There are certain types of demonstrations when you organize them, clear, whether you say so or you don't say so, your methods can lead to the replacement of government. There's a certain type of demonstration you can organize. Then you can organize demonstrations simply for the purposes of putting pressure on government and public institutions to draw their attention to the fact that growing numbers of people are getting dissatisfied with their policies and so on. You understand? The methods are different. Then you can organize demonstrations. You can organize demonstrations to show up, support for a cause, for a government, in an election, and so on. There are different types of demonstrations. Now, if you want to organize a demonstration, which can become a coup d'etat, can become the effect of a coup d'etat, or can bring about insurrection, or can bring about a revolution, or can remove a government and so on. You see what they did? Arab Spring and so on. That's what you do. You organize a demonstration to destabilize the system. You organize a demonstration to bring about confrontation you organize a demonstration which makes it impossible for the security services to function. And there are ways of doing that. You choose your route, you choose your targets in such a way that it will lead to major conflict and lead to escalation. Okay? If you want to organize demonstration as a pressure, your focus is on the numbers. What route can we choose which would enhance our numbers? So far, it has been said that the biggest demonstration in our history brought 100,000 people. Let us assume that that is true. If that is true, if you're organizing a demonstration today, and it's about pressure, it's about numbers and so on, you want to exceed this 100,000. So what route are you choosing so that you would exceed this 100,000? You understand? And from what I know, if you want to do that, you have to go through the Central Business District of Accra. There are some routes. If you choose them and you organize demonstration, you are reducing your numbers. Okay? Now, demonstrations also involved walking long distances, dancing, agitation, and so on. People get tired easily. And that is why most demonstrations are organized in the mornings, when the sun is not up, when people can spend a little energy in order to achieve maximum effect. If you're organizing a demonstration, of course now it is raining and so on, so the weather is not so severe. And you go and put it at times when the weather itself saps people energy and so on, you cannot get a big, massive demonstration. You understand? So all of these things need to be taken into account. I am not part of the planners of the Arise demonstration. I haven't even had a conversation with the organizers and so on. And I've not really followed it seriously, you know. But yesterday, I heard some things. I don't want to repeat them because they may not be true, you understand? And I was just sitting there wondering, you know, for example, I was told that part of the thing, and it may not be true, so please, this is just what I heard and I'm putting out. That part of the plan is to converge on the lawn in front of the president's house at Nima. Is that true? Now, if that is true, what is the purpose? If that is true, what is the purpose? What is that intended to achieve? And then I hear that there will be another break around Nima roundabout for food. Where is it coming from?
That's not accurate.
That's not true. Eh?
Yes.
If it's not true, then I'm happy.
They took to the police, defined their routes.
Okay.
Those ones.
Okay,
it's not.
Well, you see now.
The president's house is part, the Nima roundabout is part, and then the Flagstaff house. These are the three places.
So what is the objective? Because look, I've been speaking to leaders of the National Democratic Congress. I've spoken to many of the leaders of the National Democratic Congress. And all of them, all the people that I've spoken to, have said that, look, we don't want the destabilization of the current process. We are confident that we are winning this election, and we don't want anything to disturb our chances of winning this election. And we are winning this election clearly. That should inform the NDC's participation in any activity. If that is the strategic goal of the NDC, it should inform the NDC's participation in any activity. Okay? I'm being very honest. Master, Ghana belongs to all of us. I am completely dissatisfied with this administration. I think this administration has failed. Okay? But Sena, between me and you, just think, where in the world would anybody allow demonstrators to assemble at the lawn in front of Nana Akufo-Addo's house in Nima? Show me just one country in the world where that will be tolerated. Some thinking must go into the planning. You understand? Some rational thinking ought to have gone into the planning. And indeed, if the demonstrators plan to assemble on that lawn, I'm advising them to change that now. Because it is not in the interest of demonstrators, it is not in the interest of the security services, it won't do us any good. You see, we've been involved in organizing many demonstrations. And in fact, some of the people who are involved in organizing this demonstration have worked with us over a long period of time. Sena, before we move people onto the street, one of the major considerations is the security of the people we are moving onto the streets. Once you organize a demonstration, the lives and limbs of those who are coming to take part in that demonstration is in your hands. You have a duty to protect them first and foremost. I hope that has been taken into consideration. I hope. I mean, Kumi Preku, for example, is cited all the time. If I tell you the details that we went into to organize, you'll be surprised. We spent some time training what we called ushers, and we recruited ushers. We recruited at least 200 ushers, and we trained them. And the day of the demonstration, we gave each one of them a band so that you could identify ushers from infiltrators. In front, we had one line of defenders, so that if there was any attack or anything, that front line will be the people, and we selected the best as the line of defenders. Behind the line of defenders, we built a ring in which we put the leaders of the demonstration to ensure their protection. And then on both sides of demonstrations, we had two lines, one here, one there. And then we had a rear guard. And we had communication equipment for those in front and those at the back to constantly be communicating so that nothing is missed and so on. In spite of all these details, 4 people died at the end of the demonstration. Regrettably, 4 people died. What is worse is that those 4 people died for nothing. Because they were against VAT. The people who took part in those demonstrations when they came to power, they increased the VAT rate and so on. You understand? So I'm only saying that these are things which need to be taken into consideration. Why? If you look at the 1992 Constitution, the 1992 Constitution gives unfettered right to citizens to demonstrate. It is in the Constitution, black and white. It says, all citizens of Ghana have a right to demonstrate, period. It is the NDC which introduced fetters to the right of citizens to demonstrate by coming up with the public order law. The Constitution does not say that if you want to demonstrate, you should notify the police. It says just demonstrate. It doesn't say that you need a permit from the police. So the Constitution is clear, unfettered right to demonstrate. And I think that every Ghanaian who believes in democracy ought to support the right of people to demonstrate. It comes down to the right of free expression. The right to demonstrate is just the right of free expression. You understand? And nobody should be prevented from demonstrating. But demonstrators ought to be strategic, ought to be clear in their heads as what they want to achieve and how they want to achieve it. I am not opposed to the Arise demonstration. I cannot be opposed to the Arise demonstration. Of course, given what is happening around the country, who can be opposed to demonstrations? Master, I insist that this government is carrying on the way it is carrying on because it doesn't fear anything. It has put its hands in our mouth and found that there's no teeth in our mouth. So it is playing with our tongue. And if we don't take time, its hands will soon get into our throats. So we need to bite for the government to wake up. You understand? And demonstrations are necessary. They're a key part of it and so on. But we should be strategic in the organization of whatever we do, you know. And when I talk like this, I'm talking as a means of enhancing the demonstration, of making that demonstration very successful so that we can achieve our objectives. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Let me just do a few messages. One or two. I think we are done. There's Albert who says basic economics tells us the more the supply, the lower the price. An effective wave bumper harvest due to planting for food and jobs. The price of foodstuffs should be lower than what they used to be. The transportation cost increase should be offset by the lower prices and therefore bring prices to an equilibrium of where they used to be before the bumper harvest, and not over 50% to 100% increases we are seeing in reality. The final man here says, Sena, I just returned from Ouagadougou. Sena, for the first time, I'm getting scared because immediately after I drove across into Burkina from the Kunungugu border, I couldn't see any police checkpoint inside Burkina Highway till I got to a big town called Bito. There I asked what happened to those checkpoints on that international highway. The answer I was given is that the jihadis had taken over all the main roads. Then I asked what to do, and advice was given was that if I meet them on my way, I should show them my Ghanaian document. They may not hurt me. Luckily, I didn't see them till I got to my destination. That's Tafa in Amahia. Thank you.
A lot of people are actually downplaying the security alert. I think we do that at our own peril. 80% of the territory of Burkina Faso is now in the hands of insurgents. The government of Burkina Faso controls only 20% of the territory. So we should take the security alerts very seriously. The alarm being raised by national security is not meant to divert attention from the problems that confront us. There's a real security threat from jihadists, and we should take it seriously.
Thank you.
Look at the ambassadors for the terrorist attack. They have no knowledge about security. Musicians are the ambassadors. So how do you expect people not to downplay? Because
you just have to re-echo it.
Madam.
I agree with that position.
The security services can make any mistake they want. I'm saying that within my knowledge, I know that the alarm is credible and we should take it seriously.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me spend a moment and say and extend our condolences to Fokwashi Badohun's family. The last time I saw him, he was at Pan-African TV. He was part of the last live program we did. And then he was one of those who actually, when we gave the opportunity to those who were available to come and talk, he spoke. He's been in contact since, and I've been reading messages constantly. It was yesterday that I found out that he had passed. So, no. He's not a lawyer. But our condolences to the family of Fokwashi Badon. Well, we are done on the show for today. A belated happy birthday to Mr. Kojocho Mbuafo. Yes, he celebrated his birthday. I didn't hear anything. Mr. Pratt, maybe he contacted Mr. Pratt.
Kojo is like that too.
He doesn't do anything.
Kojo is like that. Kojo is like that. He enjoys alone.
Lawyer, I can talk. There was no party. Yes. It was.
Okay. You advise him in
this economy.
Advise him to
in this economy, you can't have a party. The way they run the economy.
Are you sure?
No. Yeah. You can't have a party.
But a belated happy birthday to him. And let me say a big thank you to Mr. Kwesi Prajina, who is General Secretary of the Socialist Movement of Ghana. A big thank you to Beatrice Annan, Esquire, a private legal practitioner getting closer to me. A very good friend, Solomon Owusu, from the New Patriotic Party. And of course, a big thank you to the Honorable Member of Parliament for Cape Coast, George Kweku, who is okay.
And we'll be there.
Okay. So the Arise Ghana demo is on the 28th. That's Tuesday and 29th, Wednesday. That demonstration will be happening. So be a part of it. If you have difficulties with what is happening, the problem in Ghana is that people will cry. When they say, let's go and demonstrate over it, they are looking at who is part of the demonstration before they will decide to be part of it. But it's important that we at least draw government's attention. Something can be done. And from what Honorable explained with the oil prices, there's fuel prices, there's a likelihood that they can do something about it. The fact that subsidy was taken off doesn't mean that it cannot be reintroduced onto. So it's policy.
It's policy. There are two different types of government policy can be used. My name is Sena, Nombo. We are back same time next week with another edition of the show. Let me say a big thank you to those of you who watched and listened to us and to the various affiliate stations we had. The show was live on Pan African Television and of course was live on Radio Gold. Thank you for your time.
Hello, Ghana! The time has come to arise. Come, let's protest against the imposition of the obnoxious e-levy on the already burdened Ghanaian people by the insensitive Akufo-Addo Bawumia government. Come, and let's demand a full-scale and bipartisan parliamentary probe into the COVID-19 expenditures. Come, let's protest against the grabbing of state land by officials of the Akufo-Addo Bawumia government, particularly the declassification of huge portions of the Achimota Forest Reserve. Come, let's protest against the increased rate of police brutality and state-sponsored killings of innocent Ghanaians, as well as the growing culture of human rights abuses under the watch of President Akufo-Addo. Arise as we call on the need to drop that in jeopardy. Arise and join us on the Kromayeshi demonstration. The Kromayeshi demonstration is a historic one, never seen before in the Republic of Ghana. A 2-day demonstration organized by Arise Ghana, which is an amalgamation of political activists, patriotic citizens from across all political parties in Ghana, the media, civil society, and all walks of life. The 2-day demonstration starts on the 28th of June to 29th of June 2022. The first day, 28 June 2022, will begin the walk from the Kwame Nkrumah Circle interchange or Brasport, where we shall converge at 12 p.m. We shall move through the Nima Police Station Street to the Akwa interchange and end at the frontage of the Jubilee House, where we will picket until 10 p.m. On day 2, 29th June 2022, we shall converge at the Elwak Sports Stadium at 12 p.m. and move on to the Lands Commission Road, to the Liberation Road, and all the way to the Ministry of Finance, where a petition will be presented to the Minister of Finance. From the Ministry of Finance, we shall move to the frontage of the Parliament House of Ghana, where we shall present a petition to the Speaker. Come and be part of this historic demonstration as we arise at the Kromayeshi demonstration. Our beloved country is in deep crisis and urgently require a rescue. Arise and join the Kromayeshi demonstration. This is a historic demonstration. Let us arise and save Ghana now.
He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He's the Redeemer and he has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He's the Redeemer and he has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He's the Redeemer and he has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom.